The Speed Force had always felt like home to Barry Allen, a warm, electric embrace that carried him between heartbeats and across impossible distances. But the moment he chased Reverse Flash through that crackling temporal rift, everything changed. The familiar golden lightning shifted to crimson, then white, then colors that shouldn't exist. Reality fractured around him like broken glass, and Barry felt himself pulled sideways through dimensions he couldn't name. When he finally tumbled out of the energy vortex, the Speed Force connection felt muted, distant, like trying to hear a conversation through water. Barry crashed into sand, endless scorching sand that stretched in every direction under twin suns that burned overhead. He rolled to his feet, crimson suit already adapting to the heat, and took in his surroundings. Dunes, rock formations, no buildings, no landmarks, nothing remotely resembling Central City or any place on Earth. "Okay," he muttered, checking his suit's integrity. No major damage. Not Kansas anymore. Definitely not Kansas. He reached for the Speed Force, feeling for that familiar well of infinite energy. It responded, but sluggishly, like pushing through molasses. When he vibrated his hand experimentally, the molecules aligned, but it took a fraction of a second longer than it should. Still fast enough to phase through solid matter, still fast enough to be functionally untouchable. But something was wrong. Barry ran. Not far. Just a quick reconnaissance loop around his crash site. The world blurred into streaks of tan and gold as he accelerated, but his internal chronometer told him he was moving at maybe 80% of his normal top speed. Still faster than sound, still fast enough that the sonic boom shattered the silence of the desert. But not the infinite velocity he was used to. He skidded to a stop at the edge of a rocky outcropping and spotted something that made his heart sink. Wreckage. Massive, twisted metal debris, half buried in the sand, clearly from some kind of spacecraft. But the design was all wrong. Angular, utilitarian, with markings in a language he'd never seen. "Star Labs, this is Flash," he said, tapping his cowl's built-in comms. "Static. Cisco? Iris? Anyone?" More static. He cycled through every frequency he knew. Nothing but white noise and strange electromagnetic interference that made his teeth ache. A sound caught his attention. Engines, approaching from the south. Barry blurred to the top of a nearby mesa in less than a second and watched as two strange vehicles crested a distant dune. They looked like enclosed speeders, hovering a meter off the ground, kicking up rooster tails of sand behind them. Dark figures inside, weapons visible. His first thought was to investigate. His second thought was interrupted by a scream. Barry's head snapped toward the source, a settlement maybe 3 kilometers away, barely visible as a cluster of domed structures, more engine sounds, energy weapons discharging, people running. The Speed Force might be diminished, but Barry Allen was still the fastest man alive. He ran. The world condensed into a tunnel of compressed time and motion. 3 kilometers became 3 seconds. Barry hit the settlement's outskirts and immediately assessed the situation. 20 armored figures in white plastoid armor, carrying energy rifles that fired red bolts instead of bullets. They were corralling civilians, humans and other species Barry didn't recognize, into a central courtyard. A family was being dragged from their home, a child crying. No more assessment needed. Barry accelerated into the first trooper from behind, using just enough force to send him flying without breaking bones. The man's armor cracked as he tumbled across the sand. Before his companions could react, Barry was already moving, a red and gold blur that disarmed 4 more troopers in the span of a heartbeat. Energy rifles clattered to the ground, yanked from hands too slow to register what was happening. "Contact! Contact!" One of the troopers shouted, his voice filtered through his helmet. Unknown hostile moving at... Barry plucked the rifle from his hands mid-sentence and crushed its power cell. The weapon sparked and died. "Impossible speed," another trooper managed to say, before Barry swept his legs out from under him. The civilians scattered, recognizing an opportunity when they saw one. Barry let them run while he worked. These soldiers, if that's what they were, moved in trained formations. But training meant nothing against someone who operated in microseconds. He phased through a trio of them, their blaster bolts passing harmlessly through his vibrating molecules, then solidified behind them to deliver precise strikes to nerve clusters. In 8 seconds, all 20 troopers were down, unconscious or groaning in pain. Barry stood in the center of the courtyard, breathing harder than he should be. The reduced speed force connection meant his metabolism was working overtime, burning energy faster than it replenished. He knelt beside one of the unconscious soldiers and examined the armor. White plastoid, black body glove underneath, helmet with a T-shaped visor. On the shoulder pauldron, a symbol, a gear-like crest he didn't recognize. He pulled the helmet off and found a human face, young, maybe mid-20s, with a nasty bruise forming where Barry had struck him. What kind of military uses armor like this? Barry wondered aloud. "The Galactic Empire," a voice answered. Barry spun. He'd been so focused on the soldier that he'd let someone approach within 10 meters. Sloppy. A tall, weathered man stood at the edge of the courtyard, hands raised in a non-threatening gesture. He had the look of a moisture farmer, practical clothes coated in dust, but his eyes were sharp and calculating. "Empire?" Barry asked. "What empire?" The man's expression shifted from cautious to confused. "The Galactic Empire? The government that controls most of the known galaxy?" When Barry's blank look didn't change, the man's confusion deepened. "What rock have you been living under?" "A different one than you, apparently." Barry stood, dusting sand from his suit. "I'm not from around here. Way not from around here. Those twin suns up there? Not my suns. This whole planet? Not my planet. That language on their armor? Not my language, but somehow I'm understanding you perfectly, which is its own kind of weird." The moisture farmer studied him for a long moment, then glanced at the groaning stormtroopers scattered across the courtyard. "You took down an Imperial patrol in seconds, alone, without a blaster." He shook his head slowly. "Whoever you are, stranger, you just made yourself the Empire's enemy. They don't forget, and they don't forgive." "Yeah, well." Barry looked at the domed settlement, at the families peering cautiously from doorways, at a galaxy he didn't understand, under suns he'd never seen. "I've fought bad guys before. I'm guessing your Empire qualifies." The farmer's laugh was bitter. "The Empire isn't a bad guy, stranger. It's the bad guy. It's every bad guy. And if they saw what you just did..." He trailed off, eyes widening as he pointed at the sky. Barry followed his gaze and saw a triangular shape descending through the atmosphere. Massive, gray, bristling with weapons. A warship unlike anything he'd ever seen, easily the size of an aircraft carrier, blocking out one of the suns as it approached. "Imperial Star Destroyer," the farmer said quietly. They were already in orbit. They saw everything. Barry felt the speed force humming in his cells, still diminished but ready. A ship that size would have hundreds, maybe thousands of those armored soldiers. Technology he didn't understand, weapons that could probably glass this entire settlement. But Barry Allen had faced impossible odds before. He'd fought gods, time travelers, and reality-bending metas. He'd saved the world more times than he could count. This galaxy far, far away was about to learn what a speedster could do. "Then let's give them a show," Barry said, lightning beginning to crackle around his boots. If you want to see more characters enter the Star Wars galaxy, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character you'd want to see in the comments below. May the Force be with you. The Star Destroyer's shadow fell across the settlement, and Barry Allen became a crimson streak of lightning racing toward the impossible. The Imperial Star Destroyer hung in the sky like a dagger pointed at the planet's heart, its gray hull reflecting the harsh light of Tatooine's twin suns. Barry watched as dozens of smaller craft began detaching from its underside. Troop transports, he assumed, each one carrying reinforcements to deal with whatever had demolished their patrol. He had maybe 90 seconds before they landed. "You need to run," Barry told the moisture farmer. "Get everyone underground, into basements, storage areas, anywhere with solid cover." "Underground won't matter if they decide to orbital bombard." "They won't," Barry interrupted, his mind already calculating trajectories and response times. "Not yet. They'll want to know what I am first, how I did what I did. That buys you time." He turned to face the man fully. "I'm going to lead them away from here. How far to the nearest city?" "Mos Eisley is about 80 kilometers north-northwest," the farmer said, pointing. "But that's worse. It's an Imperial-controlled spaceport. You'd be running straight into..." Barry was already gone. The desert became a blur of gold and amber as he pushed his speed higher, feeling the speed force respond with increasing strength. Whatever dimensional interference had dampened his connection was fading, his body adapting to this new universe's physical laws with every stride. The sonic boom he left in his wake carved a trench through the sand dunes. Behind him, he heard the transport ships alter course, their engines screaming as they banked to pursue. Barry grinned despite the situation. Good. Eyes on him meant eyes off the civilians. He ran parallel to a canyon system, using the rocky terrain to break line of sight with his pursuers. The transports were fast, faster than any helicopter he'd encountered on Earth. But they moved in straight lines, predictable patterns. Barry juked left around a mesa, then right through a narrow gap between stone pillars, then accelerated up the sheer face of a cliff, his speed allowing him to run on the vertical surface as easily as flat ground. Energy bolts screamed past him, green this time instead of red, carving molten furrows in the rock. Barry phased through a boulder as it exploded from a direct hit, the superheated fragments passing harmlessly through his vibrating molecules. "This is Transport Leader to Star Destroyer Devastator," a voice crackled through a comm system on one of the nearby transports. Barry's enhanced hearing picked it up even over the howling wind. "Target is displaying impossible locomotion. Speed exceeds anything in our database. Requesting..." Barry leapt onto the transport's hull mid-flight, his momentum carrying him up and over the cockpit. The pilot jerked in surprise, yanking the controls hard right. The transport veered wildly, clipping another ship's wing. Both vehicles spiraled toward the desert floor, and Barry was already gone, bouncing from one transport to another like a pinball, sowing chaos in the formation without causing fatal crashes. He wanted them focused on him, not murderous. The ground rushed up as Barry dropped from the last transport, tucking into a roll that absorbed the impact and converted it into forward momentum. His internal GPS, based on the sun positions and his observed trajectory, told him he'd covered about 60 kilometers in just under 2 minutes. The transports were regrouping behind him, but now something else was emerging from the Star Destroyer. Fighters. Dozens of them, smaller and faster than the transports, with distinctive hexagonal solar panel wings. They screamed through the atmosphere in tight formations, and Barry's tactical mind immediately recognized superior pursuit craft. Time to change strategies. He spotted what he was looking for, a network of caves carved into a massive rock formation. probably ancient lava tubes based on the smooth interior walls. Barry ducked inside, his speed creating a backdraft that sent sand swirling into the entrance behind him. The cave system was dark, but Barry's eyes adjusted almost instantly, his enhanced perception painting the tunnels in shades of gray and black. He slowed to a jog, relatively speaking, still faster than any human sprint, and began navigating the labyrinth. His mind worked through the tactical situation as he ran. Problem 1. He was stuck in an unknown galaxy with no way home. The Speed Force connection was strengthening, but time travel required absolute precision, and he didn't know this universe's temporal mechanics. One wrong vibration, and he could scatter himself across 1,000 timelines. Problem 2. He'd just assaulted what appeared to be the local fascist government's military. Based on the moisture farmer's reaction, this empire had serious resources and zero tolerance for resistance. Problem 3. His suit's power reserves were depleting faster than normal. Whatever weird energy permeated this galaxy, he'd felt it when he arrived, a kind of omnipresent hum that reminded him of the Speed Force, but fundamentally different. It was creating drag on his molecular structure. Problem 4. He was alone. No Team Flash, no Justice League backup, no... The thought was interrupted by a tremor that shook dust from the cave ceiling. Barry stopped, cocking his head to listen. Multiple impacts, heavy ordnance, systematic. They were bombing the cave entrances, sealing him in. Okay, Barry muttered. Okay, they're not stupid. Trap the fast guy in an enclosed space, limit his mobility. He vibrated his hand through the cave wall experimentally, feeling the molecular structure. Dense rock, but porous enough. He could phase through, but it would cost energy he might need later. Then he felt it. A subtle shift in air pressure from deeper in the cave system. A breeze, which meant another exit. Barry followed it, winding through narrower and narrower passages until he emerged into a vast underground cavern lit by bioluminescent fungi, clinging to the walls. And he wasn't alone. A creature the size of a small bus raised its massive head from a pool of water, eye stalks swiveling to fix on Barry. It looked like someone had crossed a dragon with a slug, covered in rocky protrusions that camouflaged it against the cave walls. A low rumble emanated from its throat. "Nice space dragon slug thing," Barry said, raising his hand slowly. "I'm just passing through. No need for..." The creature lunged with shocking speed, jaws opening to reveal multiple rows of crystalline teeth. Barry sidestepped at the last possible microsecond, letting it crash into the space where he'd been standing. The impact sent cracks spiderwebbing through the stone floor. "Okay, so we're doing this," Barry said, dropping into a fighting stance. The creature was fast for something its size, but Barry operated on a different timescale entirely. It snapped at him again, and he ran up its extended neck, using it as a ramp to vault over its head. He tapped its skull as he passed. Not hard enough to hurt, just enough to annoy. The beast roared and spun with surprising agility, its tail whipping around to catch Barry mid-stride. He phased through it, the appendage passing through his vibrating form like smoke. Landing on the opposite side of the cavern, Barry generated a controlled burst of Speed Force lightning that crackled across the water's surface. The creature recoiled from the electricity, more startled than injured. It regarded Barry with what might have been newfound respect, or at least recognition that this tiny biped wasn't prey. "Yeah, that's what I thought," Barry said. "How about we call it a draw? You stay in your cave, I find another exit, everybody's happy." Above them, muffled explosions continued to shake the cavern as the Imperial forces systematically collapsed the upper tunnels. Dust rained down from the ceiling, and several stalactites crashed into the pool with massive splashes. The creature looked up at the ceiling, then back at Barry. Some kind of understanding seemed to pass between them, mutual recognition that the real threat was topside. It turned its massive bulk toward a darkened passage Barry hadn't noticed, then glanced back as if to say, "Follow or don't, makes no difference to me." Barry followed. The passage wound downward for what felt like kilometers, though Barry's sense of distance was skewed by the darkness and twisting path. The creature moved with the confidence of something that knew these tunnels intimately, and Barry had to trust that it wasn't leading him into a dead end. Finally, they emerged into blazing sunlight on the far side of the rock formation, at least 10 kilometers from where Barry had entered. The creature paused at the cave mouth, its rocky hide blending seamlessly with the surrounding stone, then rumbled something that might have been farewell before retreating back into darkness. "Thanks for the assist," Barry called after it. He turned to survey his new surroundings and found himself looking at something that definitely qualified as civilization. A sprawling settlement built into and around a natural canyon system, with buildings stacked on top of each other in haphazard layers. Landing pads jutted from the cliff faces like mushrooms, and strange spacecraft of every size and configuration cluttered the airspace. A large sign in that same alien script marked the canyon entrance, but somehow Barry could read it now, the meaning translating itself in his mind. Mos Eisley Spaceport. The Imperial-controlled city, Barry said. Perfect. He'd wanted to lead the Empire away from innocent people. Instead, he'd run straight toward their stronghold. But as Barry watched a patrol of white armored soldiers marching through the canyon streets below, harassing pedestrians and demanding identification, he felt the old familiar anger kindle in his chest. The same anger he felt every time he saw a bully with a badge, a tyrant with power, someone using authority to hurt people who couldn't fight back. The speed force surged in response to his emotion, crackling around his fists in golden arcs. Whatever interference had dampened it was almost gone now. He could feel it. 90%, maybe 95%, almost back to full power. The Empire wanted to know what he was. Time to show them. Barry Allen blurred down the canyon wall, leaving a trail of lightning in his wake, and Mos Eisley Spaceport was about to have a very fast problem. Mos Eisley was a maze of contradictions. Ancient sandstone architecture mixed with high-tech landing platforms, legitimate merchants operating next to obvious criminal enterprises, dozens of alien species Barry couldn't name, walking past humans without a second glance. But what struck him most was the fear. Every time a patrol of stormtroopers rounded a corner, conversation stopped. People ducked into doorways, averted their eyes, became very interested in their datapads. The soldiers moved with the casual arrogance of occupiers who knew no one would challenge them. Barry watched from a rooftop overlooking the main thoroughfare, using his enhanced perception to catalog everything he could about this world's technology and social dynamics. The weapons were energy-based, no gunpowder, which meant different physics than he was used to. The spacecraft used some kind of faster-than-light drive based on the conversations he was overhearing. People casually discussed trips between star systems like commuters talking about their morning drive, a galactic civilization, thousands of worlds if the moisture farmer's words were accurate. And this empire controlled most of them. Great, Barry muttered. I went from protecting one city to being stuck in a galaxy-spanning fascist state. He checked his suit's power reserves again. 70% and holding steady. The Speed Force connection was stabilizing, adapting to whatever made this universe different from his own. Below, a commotion drew his attention. 3 stormtroopers had cornered an alien, insectoid, with chitinous plates and multiple arms, against a wall. One trooper had his rifle raised, while another shouted demands Barry could barely hear over the street noise. Identification chip. All non-humans are required to... I showed you already. The alien clicked back, its translator device struggling to keep up. I'm a registered merchant. I paid the... The rifle butt caught the alien across the face. It dropped to the ground, green blood trickling from a crack in its chitinous plating. Barry was moving before he consciously decided to act. The world slowed to a crawl as he accelerated. Civilians became statues, frozen mid-step. A speeder bike hung suspended in mid-air, its rider's mouth open in an eternal shout. Barry dropped from the rooftop, landing in the middle of the patrol so quickly that displaced air hadn't even registered yet. He plucked the rifles from all three troopers' hands in one fluid motion, crushed their power packs, and tossed the useless weapons into a nearby trash compactor. Then he delivered 3 precise strikes, one to each trooper's solar plexus, calculated to knock the wind out of them without causing serious injury. Time snapped back to normal speed. The troopers collapsed to their knees, gasping for breath, while their rifles clattered from the trash compactor with sparking, ruined components. The alien merchant stared at Barry with compound eyes wide in shock. The crowd that had been carefully ignoring the confrontation suddenly had their attention locked on the man in red. "You all right?" Barry asked the merchant, extending a hand to help them up. Yes. Who?" The alien accepted the hand, climbing unsteadily to their feet. "What are you?" "Someone who doesn't like bullies," Barry said. He turned to the stormtroopers, who were recovering their breath and reaching for sidearms. "I'd think real carefully about your next move, guys. I can disarm you again before your finger even touches the trigger." The lead trooper, identified by orange shoulder pauldron, managed to wheeze into his helmet comm. Code: red, main, square, unknown, hostile. Yeah, call for backup," Barry said. "I'll wait." He didn't have to wait long. Sirens wailed across the spaceport. More stormtroopers poured from garrison buildings, at least 50 of them forming a perimeter around the square. Speeder bikes screamed overhead, their mounted weapons tracking Barry's position. Civilians scattered, diving for cover. But Barry noticed some of them. A Rhodian near a fruit stand, a Twi'lek woman on a balcony, a human mechanic wiping grease from his hands, watching with something that looked like hope. An officer emerged from the garrison, his uniform crisp gray with rank insignia Barry didn't recognize. He held no weapon, just a datapad and an expression of cold calculation. "You are in violation of Imperial law," the officer announced, his voice amplified by a helmet speaker. "Assault on Imperial personnel, destruction of Imperial property, inciting civil unrest. Surrender immediately, and you will be granted a trial before execution." "Wow, that's quite an offer," Barry said. "But I'm going to pass. See, where I come from, we have this thing called due process, and innocent until proven guilty. And I'm pretty sure beating up people for their species doesn't fall under legitimate law enforcement." The officer's expression didn't change. "You are not from here. Your technology is unknown. Your biology registers as human. Yet you demonstrate impossible physical capabilities." He tapped his datapad. "The Emperor will be very interested in studying you." "The Emperor can get in line behind all the other megalomaniacs who wanted to study me," Barry replied. Lightning began crackling around his boots, arcing across the sand in golden patterns. "Here's how this is going to work. You're going to let that merchant go home. You're going to stop harassing people for being different species. And you're going to seriously reconsider your career choices. Fire." 50 rifles discharged simultaneously. Red energy bolts converged on Barry's position from every angle, a coordinated kill box that should have vaporized him. Barry faced. The bolts passed through his vibrating molecules like light through glass, scoring the stone behind him into molten slag. Before the troopers could fire a second volley, Barry was moving, a crimson streak that wove between them faster than their armor's targeting systems could track. He disarmed the first line in 2 seconds, the second line in 3. The speeder bikes crashed as he plucked their riders off mid-flight and deposited them gently on the ground. The officer reached for his sidearm and found his hand empty. Barry held the weapon up where the man could see it, then crushed it into a ball of twisted metal. "Like I said," Barry told him, "you should really reconsider those career choices." The entire engagement lasted 18 seconds. 50 stormtroopers lay groaning in the square, their weapons scattered and useless. The officer stood alone, datapad shaking in his hands, staring at Barry with something between terror and awe. What are you?" he whispered. "I'm the Flash," Barry said simply. "And I'm really hoping this galaxy has some actual heroes, because you guys definitely aren't it." He turned to leave and felt it. A cold presence, like ice water down his spine. A pressure in the air that made his Speed Force connection spike in warning. Barry spun, instincts screaming danger, just as a figure materialized from the shadows of a nearby archway. Tall, robed in black, face hidden behind a silver mask that reflected the twin suns like a mirror. And carrying a weapon Barry recognized instantly, despite never having seen one before. A cylinder that hummed with barely contained energy, a blade of pure red light extending from its hilt. "Impressive," the figure said. Voice filtered through the mask into something hollow and menacing. "But speed is meaningless against one who sees the future." The masked warrior moved, not with superhuman speed, but with perfect economy of motion. The red blade carved through the space where Barry had been standing a microsecond before, anticipating his dodge before he'd made it. Barry accelerated, circling around for a flanking attack. The blade was already there, forcing him to phase through it. He felt the energy of the weapon scrape against his molecules, even in his intangible state. Something that shouldn't be possible. "You are fast," the warrior continued, tracking Barry's movements with unnatural precision. "But I do not need to match your speed. I need only know where you will be." The blade thrust forward again. Barry twisted aside, and the warrior's free hand extended, fingers splayed. Barry felt an invisible force slam into him like a freight train, hurling him backward through a merchant's stall. Wood and fabric exploded around him as he crashed through the structure. He rolled to his feet, mind racing. That wasn't telekinesis like he'd encountered from metas back home. It felt different, more fundamental. And the way the warrior anticipated his movements. "You're reading my mind," Barry realized. "I am reading the Force," the warrior corrected. "The energy field that binds all living things. Your intentions ripple through it before you act." The SOL masked face tilted slightly. "But you are strange. Your presence in the Force is muted, as if you exist partially outside reality itself." "Yeah, I get that a lot," Barry said, generating Speed Force lightning around his fists. "Here's the thing about precognition, though. It only works if your opponent fights predictably." He threw the lightning, not at the warrior, but at 6 different targets around the square simultaneously. The bolts arced toward a stack of cargo containers, a water tower, a speeder bike's fuel cell, a support beam, a merchant's hovering sign, and the warrior's own feet. The warrior moved to block the direct attack, and realized too late it was a feint. The other 5 lightning bolts struck their targets in perfect synchronization. The cargo containers toppled. The water tower ruptured, flooding the square. The speeder exploded. The support beam collapsed. The sign crashed down, and the water conducted Barry's electricity across the entire flooded area. The Yasabai warrior leapt above the electrified water with impossible grace, flipping to land on a nearby rooftop, exactly where Barry had calculated they'd go. Barry was already there, having circled around at speeds that made the water's surface ripple seem frozen in time. He delivered a supersonic punch enhanced by the infinite mass punch technique he'd been saving. Relativistic force compressed into a single point. The impact sent the warrior flying through 3 buildings before crashing into the side of a docked spacecraft. The red lightsaber spun through the air, deactivating as it fell. Barry caught it before it hit the ground, studying the weapon with scientific curiosity. Plasma blade contained in a magnetic field, he mused. Neat. Terrible for fighting someone who can phase through electromagnetic energy, though. The warrior emerged from the wreckage, armor cracked, mask knocked askew to reveal a human face beneath, young, maybe early 30s, with a burn scar across one cheek and eyes that held fanatical certainty. "You cannot win," the warrior rasped. "Lord Vader is coming. He sensed your arrival the moment you entered this system. What I am, he is 1,000 times greater. When he arrives, then I guess I should be gone before he gets here," Barry interrupted. He tossed the lightsaber back to the warrior. "Tell your Lord Vader that the Flash says hi. Tell him this galaxy's got a new defender, and tell him that if I see his goons beating up innocent people again, I'm going to run through every Imperial facility on this planet and dismantle them bolt by bolt." Barry turned to the crowd of civilians who had emerged from cover, staring at him with expressions ranging from shock to disbelief to naked hope. "I don't know much about this galaxy yet," he told them, "but I know tyranny when I see it. And where I come from, we don't let tyrants win." He was gone before they could respond, a streak of crimson lightning that raced out of Mos Eisley and into the desert, leaving only scorched sand and a legend in his wake. Behind him, the warrior, an inquisitor of the Galactic Empire, climbed to his feet and activated his comm with shaking hands. "This is Fourth Brother," he said, "requesting immediate reinforcement. Target displays capabilities beyond any Force user on record. Recommend planetary blockade and full garrison deployment." The response came in a voice that made Fourth Brother's blood run cold despite years of conditioning. Deep, mechanical, inexorable. "I am already en route. Maintain surveillance. Do not engage." Darth Vader was coming to Tatooine. Barry ran for 3 hours straight. Not because he needed to. Even at 85% capacity, his stamina was functionally limitless. But because he needed to think, and running helped him think. The desert landscape blurred past him as he processed everything he'd learned. This galaxy operated on principles that violated everything he understood about physics. Those soldiers with their energy weapons, that was advanced but comprehensible. The spacecraft using faster-than-light travel, theoretically possible, even if humanity hadn't cracked it yet. But that warrior with the red sword, the way they'd moved, anticipated his attacks, thrown him across the square without touching him, that was something else entirely. "The Force," Barry muttered as he vaulted over a canyon in a single bound. The warrior had called it the Force, described it as an energy field binding all living things. It sounded almost like the Speed Force, but fundamentally different. The Speed Force was motion, kinetic energy, the fundamental force of velocity itself. This force seemed more universal, omnipresent, and apparently it let people read the future. Barry skidded to a stop atop a mesa, breathing easily despite the exertion. Below him stretched an ocean of sand, broken only by the occasional rock formation. Tatooine's twin suns were descending toward the horizon, painting the dunes in shades of orange and crimson that reminded him painfully of home. "Okay, Flash, assess the situation," he said aloud, a habit from years of talking through problems with his team. "You're stuck in another dimension or universe. The Speed Force connection is stabilizing, but time travel's still too risky without understanding local temporal mechanics. You've made an enemy of a galaxy-spanning fascist government, and there are people here with psychic powers that can predict your moves." He sat down on a sun-warmed boulder and watched the sun set. What would Iris say? She'd tell me to find allies, learn the landscape, figure out who the good guys are. He smiled despite himself. And she'd probably point out that I jumped into a fight without gathering intel first. The smile faded. Iris was trillions of light years away. If distance even meant anything across dimensional barriers. His team, his friends, his wife. For all he knew, they thought he was dead, and he had no idea how to get back to them. A sound interrupted his brooding. Engines, approaching fast. Barry's head snapped up to see a spacecraft, smaller than the Star Destroyer, maybe the size of a large house, descending from orbit with its running lights blazing against the darkening sky. The design was different from the rigid Imperial ships, more organic, asymmetrical, with what looked like a satellite dish mounted on its dorsal hull. The ship settled onto the sand, about 100 meters from Barry's position, landing struts deploying with practiced ease. A boarding ramp lowered with a hiss of hydraulics, and two figures emerged. The first was human, or at least humanoid, tall and lean, wearing a vest over a white shirt and pants with a distinctive red stripe down the sides. He had a blaster holstered at his hip and walked with the cocky swagger of someone who talked his way out of more trouble than he'd fought through. The second figure made Barry do a double take. Covered in brown fur, easily over 2 meters tall, with a bandolier of ammunition across his chest and a massive bowcaster held casually in his hands. Not human. Definitely not human. But the way he moved, the intelligence in his eyes, this was a person regardless of species. "That's far enough," the human called out, hand hovering near his blaster. "We're not looking for trouble." Barry stood slowly, hands visible. Funny, because trouble seems to be all I've found since arriving on this planet. "Yeah, we heard about that." The man's hand relaxed slightly. "Word travels fast in Mos Eisley," the guy in red, who moves faster than blaster fire, took down an Imperial garrison single-handedly, fought an Inquisitor to a standstill. He tilted his head appraisingly. "You don't look like much." "I get that a lot," Barry said. "Usually right before I prove them wrong." The furry alien made a series of growling, warbling sounds that Barry somehow understood. Not the words exactly, but the meaning translated itself in his mind. He's the one the rebellion was asking about. The impossible readings from orbit. "Chewie's right," the human said. "The Rebel Alliance has been monitoring Imperial communications all day. Every garrison on Tatooine is on high alert. They're saying you're some kind of Force ghost? Demon? The reports are all over the place." "I'm just a guy trying to do the right thing," Barry replied. "Who are you?" "Han Solo," the man said, with a slight emphasis that suggested the name should mean something. "This is Chewbacca. We're freelance cargo specialists." "Smugglers," Barry translated. Han's expression flickered with annoyance. "I prefer independent traders operating outside restrictive Imperial customs regulations. But sure, smuggler works." He took a few steps closer, studying Barry with the calculating gaze of someone used to assessing threats. "Look, I don't care what you are or where you came from. That's your business. But the rebellion wants to meet you, and they're paying good credits for me to find you and deliver the message. The rebellion? Barry's interest sharpened. They're fighting the Empire? Have been for years, Han confirmed. Not that it's doing much good. Empire's got them outgunned 1,000 to 1. But they keep trying. He shrugged like it was someone else's problem. Personally, I stay out of politics. Bad for business. The Wookiee, Chewbacca, growled something that made Han wince. Okay, fine. I'm trying to stay out of politics, Han amended. Chewie here has a soft spot for lost causes. He turned back to Barry. Point is, the rebellion heard about someone taking on the Empire with no weapons, no ship, no backup. They want to know if you're interested in making that a regular thing. Barry considered this. A rebellion, actual organized resistance against the Empire. People fighting for freedom against overwhelming odds. It was exactly what he'd been hoping to find. But years of experience with the Justice League had taught him to be cautious. Not every resistance movement had pure motives. Not every rebel was a hero. I want to meet them, Barry said carefully. But I'm not making any promises until I know what they're about. Where I come from, I've seen too many people start revolutions for the wrong reasons. Fair enough. Han gestured toward his ship. The Millennium Falcon can get you to their base in a few hours. We leave now. We can skip the Imperial blockade forming in orbit. Blockade? Oh yeah. Han's grin was sharp. Apparently you annoyed someone important. 3 more star. Destroyers arrived in the last hour. They're locking down the whole system. He paused. Which reminds me, my fee just went up. Running blockades is hazardous work. Barry looked at the ship, then at Han and Chewbacca, then back toward Mos Eisley, where Imperial forces were undoubtedly mobilizing. He could run from this planet. His speed would let him reach orbital velocity if he pushed hard enough. But then what? He'd be alone in space with no idea where to go. No way to survive in a vacuum for more than a few minutes, even with his healing factor. And if there were people fighting the Empire, people who needed help, that's what he did. That's who he was. All right, Barry said, starting toward the Falcon. But for the record, I can run faster than your ship flies in atmosphere. I'm choosing to get on board. Sure you can, kid, Han said with obvious skepticism. Barry blurred past him, climbed the boarding ramp, explored the entire interior of the Falcon in 3 seconds, and returned to his original position before Han finished his sentence. Nice cockpit, by the way, Barry continued seamlessly. Love the modifications to the hyperdrive, though the wiring in the starboard power coupling looks a little sketchy. You might want to check that. Han's mouth hung open. Chewbacca made a sound that might have been laughter. Okay, Han said slowly. Okay, so you really are that fast. Told you. Barry followed them up the ramp. The Falcon's interior was cramped but functional, lived in, with the comfortable wear of a ship that had seen serious use. The cockpit was a semicircular space, with viewports offering a panoramic view. Barry took one of the passenger seats, while Han and Chewbacca settled into the pilot positions. Strap in, Han said, flipping switches across the control panel. This is going to get rough. The Falcon's engines rumbled to life, with a sound that Barry felt in his chest. The ship lifted smoothly, banking toward space as Tatooine fell, away beneath them. Through the viewport, Barry watched the planet shrink, its deserts and settlements becoming abstract patterns. Then he saw them. 3 massive star destroyers in geosynchronous orbit, their hulls bristling with weapons. Smaller ships swarmed around them like insects, the hexagonal fighters he'd seen earlier, dozens of them forming patrol patterns. Imperial blockade, Han confirmed. They're scanning every ship that tries to leave. Any anomalies, they board and search. Find what they're looking for, you disappear into an Imperial prison. Don't find it, you still might disappear because some officer wants to meet his arrest quota. So, how do we get past them? Barry asked. Han's grin turned predatory. We don't. We go through them. The Falcon's engines screamed as Han pushed them to full power. The ship shot forward, accelerating toward the blockade at speeds that made Barry's inner ear protest despite his enhanced equilibrium. Unidentified freighter, cut your engines and prepare to be boarded. A harsh voice crackled over the comm. Oh, I've got a bad feeling about this, Han muttered, then ignored the order completely, juking the Falcon between two Star Destroyers with enough room to spare that Barry could see individual viewports on the warship's hulls. Turbo laser fire lit up space around them, green energy bolts the size of small vehicles converging on the Falcon's position. Han flew like he was born to it, rolling, diving, using the Star Destroyer's own overlapping fire patterns against them. One bolt meant for the Falcon struck a destroyer's shield instead, and Barry glimpsed crew members scrambling on the deck through the viewports. TIE fighters incoming! Chewbacca roared. The hexagonal fighters were fast, frighteningly fast for something with a pilot inside. They swarmed the Falcon from 3 directions, their twin laser cannons firing synchronized bursts. Han corkscrewed through the assault, and Chewbacca returned fire from the Falcon's gun turrets with devastating accuracy. Barry watched 3 TIE fighters explode in rapid succession, but more kept coming. Dozens of them, too many for even Chewbacca's skill to handle. Can you shoot? Han yelled at Barry. Never needed to, Barry yelled back. I usually run to the target. Not helpful. A TIE fighter latched onto their tail, its lasers scoring the Falcon's aft shields. Warning klaxons blared. Han pulled a maneuver that defied several laws of physics Barry was pretty sure should be universal. A spinning barrel roll combined with a 90-degree vector change that left the TIE pilot hopelessly behind. But the blockade was tightening. More fighters, more fire. The Falcon shuddered as a blast got through the shields and scorched the hull plating. We're not going to make it, Han shouted. Chewie, reroute power to forward shields. Barry, if you've got any tricks... Get me to one of those Star Destroyers, Barry interrupted. What? Just get close. Enough for me to jump. Trust me. Han exchanged a glance with Chewbacca, some kind of silent communication between them, then yanked the controls hard to port. The Falcon dove toward the nearest Star Destroyer, ignoring the withering fire, closing to within 100 meters of the warship's hull. You're insane, Han yelled. Yeah, I get that a lot too. Barry stood from his seat. Open the boarding ramp. In space? Do it. The ramp cracked open. Atmosphere explosively decompressed. Barry's suit sealed automatically, a feature Cisco had added after the vacuum of space incident on the watchtower, giving him maybe 3 minutes of air. He ran toward the ramp, building speed, feeling the speed force surge through him stronger than it had since arriving in this galaxy. And then Barry Allen jumped from the Millennium Falcon into the void of space. He flew toward the Star Destroyer like a missile, lightning crackling around him in the vacuum. The Speed Force protected him from the cosmic radiation, from the absolute cold, from everything that should kill an unprotected human in space. He hit the destroyer's hull at relativistic speed. The impact sent shockwaves through the entire kilometer-long vessel. Barry phased through the outer hull, vibrating his molecules to slip between the atoms of the ship's armor, and emerged inside what looked like a power distribution center. He ran through the ship's corridors faster than the crew could perceive. Engineering deck. He found the main reactor and generated a localized EMP burst that shut down non-critical systems without causing catastrophic failure. Command deck. He sabotaged targeting computers and navigation systems. Fighter bay. He systematically disabled every TIE fighter's launch mechanism. The entire operation took 11 seconds. Barry phased back out through the hull and pushed off, using his stored kinetic energy to propel himself toward the second Star Destroyer. Same procedure: infiltrate, disable, escape. Then the third. When he finished, 3 Star Destroyers hung dead in space, their crews scrambling to understand what had happened. The TIE fighters that had been pursuing the Falcon suddenly found themselves without command support, their formations breaking apart in confusion. Barry kicked off the 3rd destroyer's hull and accelerated back toward where he'd left the Falcon, praying Han hadn't left him behind. The ship was there, impossibly, waiting with its boarding ramp still open and atmosphere shields protecting the interior. He crashed through the shield, landed hard on the ramp, and the ship sealed behind him as Han gunned the engines and shot past the paralyzed blockade. Barry collapsed on the deck, gasping for breath, his suit's air supply exhausted. Chewbacca lumbered over and helped him to his feet with surprising gentleness. "Kid," Han said from the cockpit, his voice stunned. "What the hell are you?" "The Flash," Barry managed between breaths. "I'm the Flash, and I think I'm going to like working with the rebellion." Behind them, 3 Star Destroyers drifted helplessly, while their commanders tried to explain to Darth Vader how one man had dismantled their entire blockade. On Tatooine's surface, in a garrison command center, 4th Brother knelt before a hologram of his master. "The target has escaped the blockade, Lord Vader," he reported. 3 Star Destroyers disabled. Casualties minimal, but the damage to Imperial credibility is irrelevant. Vader's voice cut through the transmission like a blade. "I have seen this anomaly through the Force. He moves outside its currents, yet his presence ripples through them like a stone cast into still water." A pause, the mechanical breathing filling the silence. "Prepare my shuttle. I will interrogate the witnesses personally. This speedster will reveal himself again, and when he does, I will be waiting." The hologram flickered and died, leaving 4th Brother alone with the certainty that he had just witnessed the beginning of something unprecedented in the Empire's history. A rebel who could not be caught, a force that could not be predicted, a flash of lightning in a galaxy grown dark. The Millennium Falcon jumped to hyperspace with a lurch that made Barry's stomach flip. Through the cockpit viewport, the stars stretched into infinite lines of light, a tunnel of brilliant white and blue that defied everything he understood about physics. This wasn't just faster than light travel. It was something else entirely, a different dimension of space where normal rules didn't apply. "First time in hyperspace?" Han asked, noticing Barry's expression. "First time in a lot of things today," Barry admitted. "How does this even work? You're not just going fast, you're literally in a different, dimension?" "Something like that." Han adjusted a control, and the light show outside stabilized into a steady stream. Hyperspace is an alternate dimension where the laws of relativity don't bind you the same way. We plot a course through real space, then jump into hyperspace and follow that course at superluminal speeds. Takes us a few hours to reach the rebel base instead of years at sublight. Barry's mind raced through the implications. "So you're literally accessing another dimension of reality for every trip between star systems. That's..." He trailed off, shaking his head. "That's incredible and terrifying. What happens if you hit something while in hyperspace?" "You die," Han said flatly. "Violently. That's why we use navicomputers and established hyperspace lanes. Even a collision with a small asteroid at these speeds would atomize the ship." Chewbacca added something in his language that Barry somehow understood. "Tell him about the time you made the Kessel Run." "Not now, Chewie," Han said quickly. Barry settled back into his seat, studying the two smugglers. They had an easy camaraderie born from years of partnership, the kind of trust that only came from surviving impossible situations together. It reminded him of his own team. "So, what's your story?" Barry asked. "Two guys with a fast ship doing cargo runs on the edge of legality. How'd you end up working for the rebellion?" "We're not working for them," Han corrected immediately. "We're working with them, temporarily, for very good money." He paused. "Usually." Chewbacca growled something pointed. "Okay, fine. Sometimes we do jobs pro bono," Han admitted. "But that's different. That's strategic investment in future business relationships." "He means we help because it's the right thing to do," Barry translated, grinning, "even if he won't admit it." Han shot him an irritated look. "You've known me for 20 minutes. Don't pretend you've got me figured out." "I've known a lot of people like you, Han. Cynical exterior, secretly heroic interior. You talk about credits and business, but you risked your ship, which I'm guessing you love like a child, to wait for me while 3 Star Destroyers were hunting us." Barry's expression softened. "Thanks for that, by the way. You could have jumped to hyperspace and left me." Han was quiet for a moment. "Yeah, well, Chewie wouldn't let me hear the end of it if I abandoned someone who just disabled 3 Imperial warships to save our necks." He adjusted the controls unnecessarily, avoiding eye contact. "Besides, the rebellion's paying for extraction. Wouldn't get paid if I didn't deliver." Chewbacca made a sound that was definitely laughter. They traveled in silence for a while, the hypnotic rush of hyperspace filling the viewport. Barry used the time to examine his suit more closely. The cosmic radiation from his space jump had charged the Speed Force conduits beyond normal levels. His connection felt stronger than ever, probably at 95% now. Whatever dimensional barrier had weakened him initially was almost completely gone. "So, what's your deal?" Han asked eventually. "And don't give me the 'just a guy trying to do the right thing' line. Guys who can disable Star Destroyers single-handedly don't just happen." Barry considered how much to reveal. These people were strangers. Potential allies, but not yet friends. Then again, if he was going to work with the rebellion, they'd need to understand what he could do. "I'm from another universe," he said simply. "A dimension where Earth is the only planet with intelligent life we've found. No galactic empires, no faster-than-light travel. No, what did that warrior call it? The Force." Han's skeptical expression suggested he thought Barry was joking. "Another universe." "Another universe," Barry confirmed. "I was chasing a criminal through something we call the Speed Force, a dimension of pure kinetic energy that gives me my powers. Something went wrong, and I ended up here. No idea how to get back yet." "The Speed Force?" Han repeated slowly. "You're telling me there's a dimension made of speed?" "More or less. It's the source of my abilities, the superhuman velocity, the accelerated healing, the lightning generation, all of it." Barry held up his hand and let golden electricity crackle between his fingers. "Where I come from, I'm a superhero. I protect my city, my whole world sometimes, from people who want to hurt innocents." Chewbacca leaned forward from the co-pilot seat, studying Barry with renewed interest. He asked something that Barry understood as, "How fast can you actually move?" "At full capacity? Fast enough to run across oceans, up buildings, through solid matter if I vibrate my molecules right. Fast enough to catch bullets, outrun explosions, race light itself." Barry smiled slightly. "I once ran so fast I broke through the barriers between dimensions, which, ironically, is probably how I ended up here." "Light speed," Han said flatly. "You can run at light speed. Faster, actually. The Speed Force doesn't care about relativistic limits. Han exchanged a look with Chewbacca. Okay, so either you're completely insane, or you're exactly what the rebellion needs. Maybe both. Probably both, Barry agreed. But insanity aside, I mean what I said earlier. I'm not signing up for anything until I know what the rebellion actually stands for. I've seen too many resistance movements that were just as bad as the tyrants they opposed. Fair concern, Han admitted. I'm not exactly their biggest fan. Too much idealism, not enough pragmatism. But they're legit. Princess Leia's leading the political side, and she's got principles made of durasteel. Mon Mothma's coordinating strategy, and she's spent decades fighting the Empire through legitimate channels before going underground. They're not perfect, but they're not terrorists or criminals either. Princess Leia? Barry asked. Alderaanian royalty, became a senator when she was like 19, used her position to funnel resources to the rebellion right under the Empire's nose. She's... Han paused, and Barry caught something complicated in his expression. She's something special. You'll see. The way he said it suggested there was history there, or at least the potential for it. How long until we reach the base? Barry asked. Another hour or so. It's on Yavin 4, a jungle moon orbiting a gas giant in the outer rim. About as far from Imperial entanglements as you can get while still having a functioning ecosystem. Han stretched, joints popping. You should get some rest. Once we arrive, you'll be answering a lot of questions. But Barry didn't rest. Instead, he spent the time thinking about everything he'd learned. This galaxy was vast beyond comprehension. Thousands of inhabited worlds, countless species, civilizations that had been spacefaring for millennia. And somehow, it had all fallen under the control of a fascist empire. The warrior with the red lightsaber, fourth brother he'd called himself, had mentioned someone named Vader. Not an inquisitor, but something greater. The way he'd spoken the name carried weight, fear, respect. Han, who's Darth Vader? Barry asked suddenly. The cockpit went very quiet. Where'd you hear that name? Han's voice was carefully neutral. The Inquisitor I fought. He said Vader was coming, that he'd sensed my arrival. Talked about him like he was something to be terrified of. Han and Chewbacca exchanged another look, this one darker. Darth Vader is the Emperor's enforcer, Han said slowly. His right hand, his will made manifest, his instrument of terror. He's a Dark Lord of the Sith, a Force user who's embraced the dark side completely. Where the Inquisitors hunt surviving Jedi, Vader commands them. Where the Empire occupies systems, Vader breaks resistance. He's not human anymore, Han continued. Not fully. Stories say he was nearly killed, rebuilt with cybernetics and dark side alchemy. He's more machine than man now, kept alive by rage and dark power. He turned to look at Barry directly. The rebellion has sent operatives against him. The smart ones run. The brave ones die. I've seen the aftermath. Bases destroyed, ships torn apart, soldiers killed in ways that make you understand. The Force isn't just psychic, parlor tricks. Can he be beaten? Barry asked. If he could, someone would have done it by now. Han turned back to the controls. My advice? If you ever encounter Vader, run. Run faster than you've ever run before, because that's not a fight you want. Barry absorbed this information. A cyborg dark side Force user who commanded fear across an entire galaxy. Someone powerful enough that even Han Solo, who clearly didn't scare easily, advised retreat. It sounded exactly like the kind of impossible challenge Barry had faced before. Zoom, Savitar, Reverse Flash, enemies who seemed invincible until he found their weakness. I don't run from bullies. Barry said quietly. "I've faced dark speedsters, time travelers, gods. If Vader comes for me, I'll face him too." "Your funeral," Han muttered. But there was something in his tone. Not quite respect, but maybe recognition. Like he understood the stubborn heroism, even if he thought it was stupid. The hyperspace tunnel began to slow. Stars compressing back into points of light. A massive gas giant filled the viewport, bands of orange and red swirling in hypnotic patterns. And orbiting it, a small green moon covered in jungle canopy. "Yavin 4, Han announced. "Welcome to the rebellion." The Falcon descended through the atmosphere, breaking through clouds into humid jungle air. Massive trees rose hundreds of meters high, their canopies so dense that the forest floor far below existed in perpetual twilight. Ancient stone temples jutted from the foliage, ruins of some long-dead civilization, now repurposed as a military base. Barry could see ships hidden beneath the canopy, snub-nosed fighters with distinctive S-foils, transport craft, a few larger vessels. Personnel moved between the temples in small groups, all wearing the same practical military attire. This wasn't some ragtag guerrilla camp. This was an organized military operation. Han brought the Falcon down on a landing pad carved from the temple's roof. The moment the boarding ramp lowered, humid air rushed in, carrying the scent of vegetation and ozone. Barry followed Han and Chewbacca out into the jungle heat. A welcoming committee was waiting. 3 people, 2 women and a man, all wearing variations on military uniforms, but with none of the rigid formality Barry associated with soldiers. They looked tired, determined, and very interested in the new arrival. The woman in front stepped forward. She was young, maybe late 20s, but carried herself with the authority of someone decades older. Brown hair pulled back in a practical style, sharp eyes that missed nothing, and an expression that suggested she'd dealt with galaxy-spanning crises before breakfast. "Captain Solo," she said, her accent refined and cultured. "I see you managed to avoid getting captured this time." "Your faith in me is touching, Your Highness," Han replied with mock formality. She turned her attention to Barry, studying him with the same calculating intensity he'd seen in Batman. "You must be the one who single-handedly disabled an Imperial blockade. I'm Leia Organa." She extended her hand. "Welcome to the rebellion." Barry shook her hand, noting the firm grip. "Barry Allen, though most people call me the Flash." "The Flash," Leia repeated. "Han says you claim to be from another universe. Under normal circumstances, I'd be skeptical. But anyone who can do what you did to those Star Destroyers has earned the benefit of the doubt." She gestured to her companions. "This is General John Dodonna, our chief strategist, and Captain Ramus Antilles, head of our Starfighter Corps." The general was older, gray-haired, with the weathered look of a lifelong soldier. The captain was younger, alert, with a pilot's quick eyes. "Mr. Allen," Dodonna said, his voice measured and thoughtful. "We've been monitoring Imperial communications since your arrival on Tatooine. You've caused quite a stir. 3 Star Destroyers disabled, an Inquisitor defeated, multiple garrison forces neutralized, all without killing anyone, according to the reports." "I don't kill if I can avoid it," Barry said. "Where I come from, heroes don't cross that line. We stop threats, we protect innocence, but we don't execute." "A noble philosophy," Leia said. "One that will make you unique in this conflict. The Empire doesn't share your restraint." She paused, and Barry caught a flash of old pain in her eyes. But perhaps that's what we need. Someone who still believes in mercy, even against an enemy that shows none. "Before we continue," Barry said carefully. I need to understand what I'm walking into. Han gave me the overview, but I want to hear it from you. What is the rebellion fighting for? What do you want to achieve? Leia's expression shifted to something fierce and determined. Freedom, democracy, the right of sentient beings to determine their own futures without fear of Imperial oppression. She gestured toward the temple interior. Come inside. If you're considering joining us, you deserve to understand exactly what you'd be fighting for and against. Barry followed them into the temple, aware that he was standing at a crossroads. Whatever he decided in the next few hours would determine not just his role in this galaxy, but potentially the fate of trillions of beings living under tyranny. The war room was carved from ancient stone, its walls covered in star charts and tactical displays that would have looked at home in the Justice League watchtower. Holographic projections showed ship movements, planetary systems, Imperial fleet positions, a three-dimensional map of a war being fought across thousands of light years. And as Princess Leia Organa began explaining the history of the Empire, the fall of the Republic, and the desperate struggle for freedom, Barry Allen understood that he'd found something worth fighting for. Even if it meant staying in this galaxy far, far away a little longer than planned. The briefing lasted 3 hours. Barry listened as General Dodonna outlined the Empire's structure. Emperor Palpatine at the top, Darth Vader as his enforcer, regional governors controlling sectors, and the military machinery that kept trillions of beings subjugated. Princess Leia explained the political situation, how the Empire had risen from the ashes of the old Republic, how democracy had been replaced by dictatorship through manufactured crises and fear. Captain Antilles showed him tactical data from rebel operations, starfighter raids on Imperial convoys, intelligence-gathering missions, evacuations of populations targeted for pacification. The rebellion was outmatched in every measurable way. Fewer ships, fewer troops, limited resources stretched across a galaxy-spanning conflict. But what struck Barry most was the hope in their eyes. These people knew they were fighting an impossible war, and they fought anyway. The Empire controls the core worlds, the most populated and wealthy systems in the galaxy, Leia said, gesturing to the holographic display. They have the military infrastructure of the former Republic, plus 20 years of militarization and expansion. Thousands of star destroyers, millions of stormtroopers, planetary garrisons on every major world. And you have? Barry asked. Currently, about 40 capital ships, most of them corvettes and frigates salvaged from the Clone Wars era. Maybe 300 starfighters. Ground forces number in the tens of thousands spread across dozens of cells. Dodonna's expression was grim. In a conventional war, we lose badly. Our only advantage is mobility. We hit targets the Empire doesn't expect, avoid direct confrontation, inspire others to resist. Guerrilla warfare, Barry said, understanding. Asymmetric tactics against a superior force. Exactly. Leia pulled up another display, this one showing civilian casualties. The numbers made Barry's stomach turn. The Empire responds to rebellion with overwhelming force. When a planet resists, they make examples. Orbital bombardment, mass arrests, public executions. Her voice remained steady, but Barry saw her hands clench. My homeworld of Alderaan has been threatened multiple times. The Emperor uses fear as his primary weapon. Barry stood and walked closer to the holographic display, studying the scope of the conflict. Thousands of systems, billions of beings, a war that had been fought in the shadows for years with no end in sight. What about the Jedi? He asked. The Force users who aren't evil. The warrior I fought mentioned them, said the Empire hunted them. The room went silent. Leia and Dodonna exchanged uncomfortable glances. The Jedi Order was destroyed nearly 2 decades ago, Leia said quietly. During the final days of the Republic, they were accused of attempting to overthrow the government. Order 66 was issued, a command that turned the clone army against the Jedi. Thousands died in a single day. The survivors were hunted by the Inquisitors and Lord Vader. Vader himself was once a Jedi, Dodonna added. Before his fall to the dark side, he knows their techniques, their hiding places, their methods. Very few escaped him. Are there any left? Barry asked. Any Jedi still alive who could help fight the Empire? Rumors, Leia said. Stories of survivors hiding on Outer Rim worlds, but nothing confirmed. If any Jedi remain, they've gone to ground so deep we can't find them, which means the Empire probably can't either. Barry processed this. An order of mystical warriors, betrayed and destroyed, their enemies now hunting the survivors. It reminded him uncomfortably of the Speed Force users he'd encountered. How Zoom had killed speedsters across the multiverse. How he'd been targeted by time remnants and evil duplicates. So you're fighting alone, he said. No Jedi support, no Force users on your side. We have something better, Leia replied, her chin lifting. We have people who choose to resist despite having no special powers. Ordinary beings standing against impossible odds because freedom matters more than survival. She met his eyes steadily. That's what the rebellion is, Flash. Not Force wielders or supernatural warriors, just people who refuse to kneel. Barry smiled slightly. You'd get along with my friend Superman. He says something similar, that humanity's greatest strength is choosing to be heroic even without powers. Superman? Leia asked. Another hero from my world. He's an alien with abilities that make him nearly invincible, but his favorite thing about humans is how we help each other despite being fragile. Barry's smile faded. I miss my team, my wife, my city. But if I'm stuck here, I want to make it count. I want to help. Then let's talk about what you can do, Dodonna said, pulling up tactical projections. You've demonstrated extreme velocity, phasing through solid matter, electromagnetic generation, and resistance to environmental hazards, including vacuum. What are your limitations? Barry considered how much to reveal. Military commanders would immediately start planning operations around his abilities, which meant they needed accurate information. My powers come from the Speed Force, an extra-dimensional source of kinetic energy. When I arrived in this galaxy, the connection was weakened by dimensional barriers and something about the pervasive energy here. The Force, I think, it creates interference. He generated a small lightning bolt between his fingers. But I've adapted. I'm at maybe 95% capacity now and getting stronger every hour. At 95%, you disabled 3 Star Destroyers, Antilles said. What can you do at full capacity? Time travel, Barry said bluntly. Not recommended because it creates temporal paradoxes, but theoretically possible. Dimensional travel, though that's how I got stuck here in the first place. Phasing through matter becomes effortless. Speed increases to effectively infinite velocity. I can be anywhere on a planet instantaneously. The room was very quiet. Time travel, Leia repeated carefully. You could go back and prevent the Empire from rising. No, Barry said firmly. I really can't. Trust me, I've seen what happens when people mess with time. You create alternate timelines, paradoxes, worse problems than you solve. Even if I wanted to, and I don't, I have no idea how your galaxy's temporal mechanics work. I could erase myself from existence, create a timeline where the Empire is even worse, or split reality into competing versions. He shook his head. Time travel is off the table except for absolute emergencies. Understood, Dodonna said, though he looked disappointed. What about your physical requirements? Do you need special fuel, food, rest? I need about 5 times normal caloric intake when using my powers extensively. The Speed Force accelerates my metabolism, so I burn through energy fast. Sleep isn't urgent. I can function for days without it, but I'm still human. I get tired, I can be hurt if something's fast enough to hit me, and I'm not invulnerable. Barry paused. The lightsaber the Inquisitor used affected me even when I was phasing. Something about the energy disrupted my intangibility. Lightsabers are plasma contained in Force-generated magnetic fields, Leia explained. They interact with matter on an exotic level. That's probably why they affected you. Good to know, Barry said. Means I need to be more careful around Force users with those weapons. Han, who'd been leaning against the wall silently throughout the briefing, finally spoke up. So, what's your play, Princess? You've got a dimensional refugee with impossible speed who can disable Star Destroyers. How do you want to use him? Leia's expression turned calculating. That depends on what Mr. Allen wants. We can offer intelligence on Imperial operations, supply caches for food, technical support for his suit. In exchange, she gestured to the star map. We have targets: high-value Imperial facilities, weapons convoys, prison transports carrying political dissidents, operations where speed and precision could save lives that guerrilla attacks would endanger. You want me as a surgical strike asset, Barry said. I want you as whatever you're willing to be, Leia corrected. We don't conscript people into the rebellion. Everyone here chose to fight. If you want to help, we'll coordinate operations that match your capabilities and ethics. If you'd rather stay independent, we can share intelligence and coordinate loosely. Barry studied the star map, seeing the scope of what they were asking. This wasn't stopping a bank robbery or fighting a meta-human villain. This was a war spanning thousands of worlds, fought against an enemy with resources he could barely comprehend. But it was also people fighting for freedom, innocents suffering under tyranny. The same fundamental struggle he devoted his life to on Earth, just on an incomprehensible scale. I'll help, he said, but I have conditions. Name them, Leia said. First, I don't kill. I'll disable, disarm, incapacitate. But I won't execute prisoners or use lethal force except as an absolute last resort. That's non-negotiable. Agreed, Leia said immediately. The rebellion doesn't execute prisoners either. We're not the Empire. Second, I choose my targets. If you give me a mission that crosses my ethical lines, I can refuse without prejudice. Acceptable, Dodonna said. We're not tyrants giving orders. We're requesting assistance. Third, you help me find a way home. I've got people back in my universe who are probably terrified, thinking I'm dead. The moment we figure out dimensional travel that won't destroy reality, I'm gone. No hard feelings. Of course, Leia said, though something in her expression suggested she was already thinking about how valuable Barry would be, long-term. We have scientists studying hyperspace mechanics and exotic physics. If anyone in this galaxy can help you return home, we'll find them. Barry extended his hand. Then we have a deal. The Flash is officially working with the rebellion. Leia shook his hand, her grip firm. Welcome aboard, Flash. I think you're going to make a real difference here. There is one more thing, Dodonna said carefully. You need to understand the risk you're taking. The Empire now knows you exist. Darth Vader has been assigned to hunt you specifically. We intercepted communications confirming this. He'll study your tactics, set traps, bring overwhelming force to bear. The General's expression was grave. You've made yourself the Empire's highest priority target. That means everyone around you is in danger. I'm used to being target priority 1, Barry said. Where I come from, the bad guys learn pretty quick that I'm a problem they need to solve. It never works out well for them. Vader isn't a bad guy, Han said from his position against the wall. He's a nightmare in a black suit. Don't underestimate him because you beat an Inquisitor. I don't underestimate anyone, Barry replied. But I also don't run from fights that matter. If Vader comes for me, I'll face him. Maybe I'll win, maybe I won't. But I'll make sure innocents don't get caught in the crossfire. Chewbacca growled something approvingly. What did he say? Leia asked. He said I remind him of his people, Barry translated. Stubborn, honorable, and slightly insane. That tracks, Han muttered. All right, Leia said, pulling up a new set of tactical displays. If you're ready, we have 3 immediate targets that could benefit from your unique capabilities. She highlighted a system in the mid-rim. Imperial prison transport heading to a labor camp. 200 political prisoners, most of them civilians arrested for speaking against the Empire. The transport is escorted by 3 frigates. Too much firepower for our starfighters to engage safely. Barry studied the data. You want me to infiltrate the transport, disable the security systems, and free the prisoners? Without alerting the frigates until it's too late, Leia confirmed. Can you do it? Barry's smile was confident. I can be on that transport through every corridor and back in orbit before the guards finish their next breath. Give me the coordinates. The transport is 3 hours away by hyperspace, Antilles said. We can have a ship ready in 15 minutes. Princess Leia wants to oversee the mission personally. You're coming? Barry asked Leia. Someone needs to coordinate the prisoner evacuation once you've disabled security, she said matter-of-factly. Besides, I want to see you work. The reports from Tatooine sound impossible. I'd like to confirm them with my own eyes. Han groaned. Please tell me you're not taking the Falcon on a prison break without paying me first. I'm commandeering the Falcon for a prison break, Leia said sweetly. Consider it repayment for that debt you owe Jabba that I helped reduce. That was 1 time, 3 times, Leia corrected. This is why I avoid politics, Han grumbled, but he was already heading for the door. Come on, Chewie, let's prep the ship for another insane mission that'll probably get us killed. Barry followed them out of the war room, feeling something he hadn't felt since arriving in this galaxy. Purpose. He might be stranded far from home, cut off from his team and his wife. But he wasn't helpless. He could still help people. Still fight for what was right. And if that meant taking on a galaxy-spanning empire, one impossible mission at a time, well, Barry Allen had never been afraid of impossible odds. As they walked through the temple corridors toward the landing pad, Leia fell into step beside him. Thank you, she said quietly, for choosing to help. We've been fighting this war for so long that sometimes it feels like we're just delaying the inevitable. But people like you, people who stand up against tyranny even when there's no tactical advantage, that's what keeps hope alive. Where I come from, someone once told me that the only way evil wins is if good people do nothing, Barry replied. I've seen what happens when heroes give up. I won't let that happen here. Leia smiled, a genuine expression that made her look younger, less burdened by the weight of rebellion and politics. I think you and I are going to work well together, Flash. Call me Barry, he said. Friends use first names. Then call me Leia. She extended her hand again. To friendship and freedom. To friendship and freedom, Barry agreed, shaking her hand. Above them, through the temple's open roof, the gas giant Yavin filled the sky with bands of swirling color. In orbit, a prison transport carried innocent beings toward suffering. And in the Imperial command structure, Darth Vader was assembling forces for a hunt unlike any the galaxy had seen. But Barry Allen was the fastest man alive, and he was about to teach the Empire what it meant to face someone who moved faster than fear itself. The prison transport was a blocky utilitarian vessel, 300 meters of durasteel and misery. Through the Falcon's viewport, Barry watched it drift through space, flanked by its 3 escort frigates like sharks circling prey. The ship's transponder identified it as Imperial Correctional Transport 717, but the rebellion's intelligence classified it as a slave ship in all but name. 200 prisoners, Leia said from the co-pilot seat, reviewing data on her datapad. Journalists, teachers, local politicians, anyone who spoke too loudly against the Empire. They're being transported to Kessel, a prison planet with spice mines. Average life expectancy after arrival, 18 months. Barry's jaw tightened. Not on my watch. The Falcon was running dark, passive sensors only, hiding in the shadow of an asteroid field while they observed the transport's route. Han had plotted an intercept course that would bring them within 10,000 meters, close enough for Barry's purposes. "Okay, here's the plan," Barry said, standing from his seat. "Han brings us in close under the guise of a navigational malfunction. I jump from the Falcon, phase through the transport's hull, disable their security systems and guards, unlock the prison cells, then signal you. Leia brings the Falcon into dock. We evacuate the prisoners, and we're gone before the frigates realize what happened." "Just like that," Han said skeptically. "Just like that. And if something goes wrong? If they detect you or the frigates notice us, or..." "Then I improvise," Barry interrupted. "I've done this kind of thing hundreds of times. Trust me." Leia studied him for a long moment. "How long will you need inside the transport?" 30 seconds. Maybe 45 if their security is more sophisticated than I'm expecting. 45 seconds to infiltrate an Imperial prison ship, disable all security, neutralize the guards, and free 200 prisoners. Leia's tone was carefully neutral. "That seems optimistic." "Watch and learn, Princess." Han piloted the Falcon out of the asteroid field, broadcasting a distress signal about engine malfunction and life support failure. The transport's communication officer responded immediately, ordering them to maintain distance and transmit identification codes. "This is Freighter Stellar Envoy," Han said into the comm, pitching his voice with just enough panic to sound convincing. "Our hyperdrive motivator seized up and we're venting atmosphere. We need immediate assistance or we're dead in 30 minutes. A pause. Then, "Maintain your position. Do not approach the transport. A frigate will dispatch a rescue team to your coordinates." Negative. Han's acting was surprisingly good. "Our hull's compromised. We need to dock now or..." Static. Han had cut the transmission with perfect timing. "That bought us maybe 3 minutes before they realize we're not actually dying," he said. "Make it fast, Flash." Barry moved to the airlock, Leia following him. She'd changed into practical field gear, still dignified, but ready for action. A blaster hung at her hip, and she'd pulled her hair back into a tight braid. "You're sure about this?" she asked quietly. "We can find another way. A more conventional approach. Would take weeks of planning and risk rebel lives in a firefight," Barry finished. "This is what I do, Leia. I'm the guy who runs into impossible situations and comes out with everyone safe. It's literally my job description." She nodded, though worry still creased her brow. "Be careful. We don't know what kind of security measures they have inside. Force fields, automated defenses. I'll phase through the force fields and move too fast for automated targeting." Barry checked his suit's power levels one more time. 96%. The Speed Force was singing in his cells, ready. 3 minutes. Time me. He sealed his suit's breathing apparatus. Enough air for 5 minutes in. Vacuum. And opened the airlock. Space greeted him like an old friend. Absolute silence, infinite darkness, broken only by distant stars and the looming presence of the prison transport. Barry launched himself from the Falcon with precise force, becoming a streak of crimson lightning across the void. The transport grew rapidly in his vision. Guard towers on the hull, weapon emplacements, sensor arrays, all useless against someone moving faster than their tracking systems could register. Barry phased as he hit the outer hull, his molecules slipping between atoms like water through a sieve. He emerged inside a corridor, snapping back to solid form mid-stride. The Speed Force immediately cataloged his surroundings. Institutional gray walls, flickering overhead lights, the acrid smell of recycled air. Security cameras in the corners. He noted their positions and continued moving. The entire transport layout appeared in his mind as he ran through it. A three-dimensional map constructed from vibrations, air currents, sound echoes. Engines below, command deck above, prison blocks in the center. Guards clustered in 3 main locations: command deck, armory, and central security station. Barry hit the security station first. 2 officers sat at monitoring stations, watching feeds from 100 cameras. Neither of them had time to register the red blur before Barry had already removed their sidearms, disabled their communications, and locked them inside a storage closet. He pulled up the security interface, written in BASIC, the galactic common language that somehow translated itself in his mind, and began typing commands at superhuman speed. Disable internal sensors. Unlock cell blocks A through F. Deactivate automated defenses. Loop camera feeds. Cut communications to escort frigates. The entire operation took 8 seconds. Barry was already moving to the armory. 6 guards, all armed with rifles, playing cards while their prisoners suffered a few decks below. They never saw him. One moment they were laughing at someone's bad hand. The next, they were unconscious on the floor, weapons disassembled into component parts scattered across the room. 12 seconds elapsed. Command deck next. The captain, a cruel-faced woman with commander's insignia, was reviewing prisoner manifests when Barry phased through the door behind her. He removed her blaster, disabled the bridge controls, and left her shouting into a dead comm system before she could finish her first word of alarm. 19 seconds. The prison blocks were hell-made manifest. Cramped cells designed for 4 people held 8. The air reeked of sweat, fear, and despair. Prisoners looked up as their cell doors hissed open, expressions shifting from confusion to disbelieving hope. "Everyone out," Barry called, his voice cutting through the murmur of shock. "This is a rescue. Follow the lit corridors to the main docking port. Move quickly and stay together." Who are you?" an elderly Rhodian asked, rising on shaky legs. "I'm the Flash," Barry said, already moving to the next block. "And the rebellion sent me to bring you home." He repeated the message in every block, herding confused prisoners toward the docking area while simultaneously checking for wounded or sick who needed assistance. A Twi'lek woman with a broken leg. Barry lifted her gently and carried her to the docking area in a blur. A human teenager hyperventilating from panic. Barry took 30 seconds to calm him down, using the same techniques he'd learned from police trauma counselors. 41 seconds total. The Millennium Falcon appeared at the docking port, its boarding ramp extending. Leia stood at the entrance with a med kit, organizing the evacuation with practiced efficiency. Chewbacca was directing prisoners to the cargo hold, while Han kept the engines hot for a quick departure. "All guards neutralized," Barry reported, appearing at Leia's side. security systems offline. But the Yakiyui escort frigates are going to notice their communications went dark any second now. We need 3 more minutes to get everyone aboard, Leia said, helping an elderly human man up the ramp. Then I'll buy us 3 minutes. Barry blurred back through the transport, this time heading for the communications relay. The frigates would be trying to hail the transport, and when they got no response, they'd investigate. He needed to delay that response. He found the main communications array and carefully, very carefully, introduced a fault in the system that would look like natural equipment failure rather than sabotage. Static feedback loops, corrupted data packets, memory buffer overflows. Nothing that couldn't be fixed. But it would take a technician 20 minutes to diagnose and repair. That should keep them confused long enough. Barry returned to the docking port to find the last prisoners boarding. 200 people. Humans, Twi'leks, Rhodians, Bothans, species Barry didn't recognize, all looking at him with expressions of wonder and gratitude. "Is everyone accounted for?" he asked Leia. She checked her datapad, comparing names against the prison manifest. Everyone. No casualties, minimal injuries. This is... She trailed off, shaking her head. "I've never seen an extraction this clean. Usually we lose ships, fighters, people. But you did this alone in under 2 minutes. 1 minute, 47 seconds, actually," Barry corrected with a slight smile. "But who's counting?" An alarm finally began wailing through the transport. Someone on the command deck had manually triggered it. The escort frigates would be responding now, bringing their weapons online, preparing to investigate. "Time to go," Han called from the cockpit. "We've got 30 seconds before those frigates start shooting." Barry herded the last prisoners aboard. "Everyone hold on to something. This might get bumpy." The Falcon detached from the transport with a clang of disconnecting umbilicals. Han immediately threw the ship into a sharp banking turn, diving under the transport's bulk to use it as cover from the frigate's line of fire. "They're targeting us," Leia called out, watching the sensors. "Yeah, I noticed," Han replied, juking left as turbolaser fire carved through space where they'd been a moment before. "Chewie, redirect all power to aft shields. Barry, if you've got any tricks left." Barry was already at the communications console, fingers moving faster than the eye could follow. He'd spent his run through the transport memorizing Imperial communication protocols and encryption keys. Now he broadcast a message on the frigate's command frequency, mimicking the transport captain's voice pattern that he'd recorded during his brief visit to the command deck. "Stand down. Stand down. The escaped ship is carrying Imperial intelligence operatives on a classified mission. Cease fire immediately." The turbo laser barrage stopped. "Nice trick," Han admitted. "How long before they realize it's fake?" "Maybe 2 minutes if they're slow, 30 seconds if they're competent. Then we jump to hyperspace now." Han pulled the hyperdrive lever, and the stars stretched into infinite lines. The Falcon entered hyperspace with its cargo hold full of freed prisoners, and the prison transport drifted dead in space with its guards locked in storage closets and its command crew shouting ineffectually at broken equipment. Barry slumped in the gunner's seat, finally allowing himself to feel the exhaustion. The operation had lasted less than 5 minutes total, but operating at those speeds in an unfamiliar environment had drained his reserves more than he'd expected. Leia appeared with a ration bar and a canteen of water. "Eat. You look like you just ran a marathon." "More like 10 marathons," Barry said, accepting the food gratefully. "But worth it. 200 people free who would have died in those mines." "You saved them," Leia said quietly. "Not the rebellion, not our ships or fighters. You alone, in under 2 minutes." She sat beside him, her expression thoughtful. "Do you understand what you've just proven?" Every mission like this usually costs us pilots, resources, time. But you can do in seconds what takes us months to plan. Don't get too excited, Barry cautioned. I can't be everywhere at once. And eventually, the Empire will adapt. They'll develop countermeasures, set traps designed specifically for someone with my abilities. Let them try, Leia said with fierce determination. Right now, you've given 200 people their lives back. You've proven the Empire isn't invincible. That matters more than you know. In the cargo hold, the freed prisoners were talking excitedly, crying, embracing each other. Barry could hear their conversations through the Falcon's thin walls, stories of arrest, imprisonment, the hopeless certainty that they'd die in the mines. And now, impossibly, freedom. This is why I do it, Barry said softly. Not for glory or recognition, for moments like this, seeing people safe who shouldn't be. Then you're exactly what the rebellion needs, Leia replied. The journey back to Yavin 4 took 3 hours. Barry spent the time talking with the freed prisoners, learning their stories, understanding what life under the Empire meant for ordinary beings. A journalist who'd published an exposé on Imperial corruption, a teacher who'd refused to use Empire-approved textbooks, a planetary governor who'd spoken against increased taxes to fund military expansion. None of them were warriors. None had committed violence. Their only crime was refusing to be silent. It reminded Barry of everything he fought against back home: authoritarianism, censorship, the crushing of dissent. But the scale was so much larger here. These weren't isolated incidents. They were systemic oppression affecting trillions. When the Falcon finally dropped out of hyperspace near Yavin 4, the jungle moon had never looked more welcoming. The landing was met by rebellion personnel ready to process the refugees. Medical teams, counselors, logistical coordinators making sure everyone had food and shelter. Barry stood on the landing pad, watching the freed prisoners descend the ramp into their new lives. Some were crying, others stood in stunned silence. All of them were alive. General Dodonna approached, datapad in hand. Remarkable work, Flash. Clean extraction, no casualties, minimal exposure to rebel assets. If we can replicate this success... He trailed off, already thinking strategically. What's the next target? Barry asked. Dodonna pulled up a star chart. We have 17 similar operations in our queue. Prison transports, labor camps, detention centers, all of them high risk for conventional assault. He looked at Barry. How soon can you be ready for another mission? Barry checked his internal reserves. The Speed Force was already replenishing what he'd used. His metabolism, converting the ration bars into usable energy at superhuman rates. By morning, he'd be at full capacity. Give me 8 hours to rest and refuel, he said. Then point me at the next prison that needs emptying. Dodonna smiled, a genuine expression that made him look years younger. Welcome to the rebellion, Flash. I think you're going to change this war. As Barry walked toward his assigned quarters in the temple, he felt his communicator vibrate. The one Cisco had built that theoretically worked across dimensions. Probably just interference from hyperspace radiation or the Force or whatever exotic energy permeated this galaxy. But for a moment, just a moment, he let himself hope that maybe, somehow, his team was still trying to reach him across the impossible distance between universes. I'm still here, he whispered to the empty corridor. Still fighting, still being a hero. I'll find my way back to you. I promise. The communicator went silent, and Barry Allen, the fastest man, alive, alone in a galaxy far from home, allowed himself 5 minutes of grief before returning to the war. Because that's what heroes did. They kept fighting, even when it hurt. Barry woke to the sound of alarms screaming through the rebel base. He was on his feet and out the door before his conscious mind fully processed what was happening. The speed force already flooding his system with adrenaline and accelerated perception. The temple corridors were chaos. Personnel running toward defensive positions, starfighter pilots sprinting for their craft, officers shouting coordinates and tactical updates. "What's happening?" Barry asked, catching a passing technician by the shoulder. "Imperial fleet," the technician gasped. "They found us. Multiple star destroyers dropping out of hyperspace. They're launching fighters." Barry let him go and blurred toward the command center. He arrived to find Leia, Dodonna, and a dozen other officers clustered around a holographic display showing the space above Yavin 4. 6 star destroyers in orbit, disgorging waves of TIE fighters like angry hornets. And leading them, a ship Barry hadn't seen before, larger, more menacing, bristling with weapons that made the other destroyers look like escorts. "The Executor," Dodonna said grimly. "Vader's personal flagship. A superstar destroyer, 8 kilometers long, more firepower than most planetary defense fleets." "He tracked us here?" Leia's voice was taut with controlled fear. "How?" "We've been careful." "He tracked him," Hunt said, jerking his thumb at Barry. He'd appeared in the command center with Chewbacca, both carrying bags like they were about to run. After that prison break yesterday, Imperial communications went insane. Every garrison, every fleet commander, looking for the Red Demon. Vader must have calculated possible rebel base locations and came straight here. "So this is my fault," Barry said flatly. "This is the Empire's fault," Leia corrected sharply. "Don't you dare take responsibility for fascists doing fascist things." She turned to Dodonna. "Evacuation status." "We can have the critical personnel and equipment away in 30 minutes, the general replied. "But the Starfighter Corps, the ground teams, all the non-essential personnel, that's 2 more hours minimum." "We don't have 2 hours," Captain Antilles said, watching the tactical display. "Vader's deploying troop transports. They'll be on the surface in 15 minutes. The command center went silent as everyone processed the math. They couldn't evacuate everyone in time, which meant people would be left behind, captured or killed by Imperial forces. Barry watched the holographic display, his mind already calculating vectors, speeds, possibilities. 6 star destroyers, hundreds of TIE fighters, thousands of stormtroopers about to land on Yavin 4. An enemy commander who could supposedly predict the future through the Force. Impossible odds, exactly his specialty. "I can buy you time," Barry said. Every head turned toward him. "Flash, no," Leia started. "How much time do you need for a full evacuation?" Barry interrupted, addressing Dodonna. "Everyone out? Nothing left behind for the Empire to use?" 2 hours, Dodonna said. "But you can't hold off an entire Imperial invasion force for... Watch me." Barry turned to Leia. "Get everyone to the transports. Priority to the freed prisoners from yesterday. They don't deserve to be recaptured after 1 day of freedom. Then pilots, technicians, anyone else you can fit." "Barry, there are thousands of stormtroopers about to land," Leia said urgently. "And Vader himself is out there. This isn't like disabling unmanned ships. You'll be fighting trained soldiers with air support and orbital bombardment capability." "I know." Barry's expression was calm, resolved. "But I'm faster than their air support, and I can be gone before orbital strikes hit. Besides," he smiled slightly, "it's not like they can catch me." "He's insane," Han muttered. "Completely, totally insane." "Probably," Barry agreed. "But I'm also the only chance you've got. So are you going to argue with me, or are you going to start evacuating?" Leia held his gaze for a long moment, and Barry saw the conflict in her eyes. The commander weighing tactical necessity against the moral cost of sending someone into impossible danger. Finally, she nodded. 2 hours, she said. We'll be gone in 2 hours. Then I'll give you 3, just to be safe. Barry turned toward the exit. Oh, and Leia, when you write the report about this, maybe leave out the part where I said it would be easy. I don't want to sound cocky. He was gone before she could respond. A crimson streak that raced through the temple corridors and out into the jungle dawn. The first wave of Imperial troop transports was already descending through the atmosphere. 20 massive ships dropping through the clouds like falling stars. Barry could see more behind them, waiting their turn. This was a full-scale invasion, the kind of overwhelming force the Empire deployed when they wanted to make an example. He reached the jungle, clearing where the transports planned to land, and allowed himself 3 seconds to appreciate the irony. Yesterday, he'd infiltrated a prison transport alone. Today, he was about to fight an entire invasion force. Okay, Flash, he muttered to himself. Time to prove you're not just fast, you're smart fast. The lead transport touched down with a hydraulic hiss, its boarding ramps extending. Stormtroopers poured out in organized formations, 20, 50, 100, 200. Professional soldiers moving with practiced efficiency, establishing a perimeter, setting up heavy weapons. Barry let them deploy completely. Let them think they were secure. Then he hit them like lightning. He didn't hurt anyone. That was important. Even in war, even against an empire of fascists, Barry Allen didn't kill. But what he did was almost worse for enemy morale. He disarmed every trooper in the first wave before they could fire a shot. 200 rifles, removed from hands too slow to register, motion, stacked in a neat pyramid at the center of the clearing. The stormtroopers stood in shocked silence, staring at empty hands and wondering what had just happened. Then Barry took their helmets, all of them. 200 white helmets suddenly vanishing from heads, appearing in an orderly line next to the rifle pyramid. The psychological impact was immediate. Soldiers who'd hidden behind anonymity suddenly exposed, vulnerable, human. Go home, Barry said, his voice carrying across the clearing with perfect clarity despite moving at impossible speeds. Tell your commanders that the rebellion has a protector now. Tell them the Flash doesn't want to fight you, but he will if you keep coming. Tell them to leave this moon and never come back. A lieutenant, identifiable only by his shoulder pauldron since his helmet was gone, tried to raise his sidearm. Barry plucked it from his hand mid-draw and crushed it into scrap metal. That was your warning, Barry said quietly. The next person who points a weapon at me gets a one-way trip to orbit. Am I clear? The lieutenant nodded slowly, fear evident in his suddenly human eyes. Good. Now sit down and stay there until your commanders recall you. The stormtroopers sat, all 200 of them, cross-legged in the clearing like children in timeout, watching the red-suited figure who dismantled their invasion in 20 seconds. Barry turned his attention to the sky. More transports descending. He let them land, 5 more, each deploying 200 soldiers. Then he repeated his performance. Disarm, remove helmets, stack equipment, deliver warning. Within 10 minutes, 1,000 Imperial soldiers sat in enforced peace, while Barry Allen proved that speed was the ultimate defensive weapon. But he knew this wouldn't last. The Empire would adapt. They'd stop sending ground troops and start using aerial bombardment. Or they'd send Force users who could predict his movements. Right on cue, he felt it. That same cold presence from Tatooine. The pressure in the air that made the Speed Force spike in warning. Barry turned to see a Lambda-class shuttle descending through the jungle canopy. It landed with ominous precision, and the boarding ramp lowered with a hiss of compressed air. Darth Vader emerged like nightmare made manifest. Over 2 meters tall, encased in black armor that seemed to absorb light itself, with a helmet that hid any trace of humanity. His cape billowed despite the still air, and each breath came as a mechanical rasp, in and out, in and out, the sound of something kept alive through sheer will and dark power. The seated stormtroopers immediately scrambled to their feet, snapping to attention. Whatever discipline Barry had imposed meant nothing compared to their terror of this figure. Vader surveyed the scene with slow, deliberate movements. The stacked weapons, the neatly arranged helmets, the 1,000 soldiers who'd been neutralized without injury. His helmeted head turned toward Barry with terrible focus. "Impressive," Vader said, his voice deep and mechanically filtered. "You disarm without killing, disable without destroying. You fight like a Jedi." He took a single step forward. "But you are no Jedi." "No," Barry agreed, dropping into a ready stance. "I'm something your Empire has never seen before." "I have seen many things," Vader replied. "I have fought Jedi Masters and dark side prophets. I have conquered planets and broken armies. You believe your speed makes you unique. It does not. It makes you predictable." Vader's hand extended. Barry felt the Force grip him, an invisible pressure that locked his limbs and lifted him off the ground. He'd felt telekinesis before, from various metas back home, but this was different, more fundamental, like reality itself was pressing down on him. "The Force binds all things," Vader continued, walking slowly toward Barry's suspended form. "Including you. Your speed allows you to move between moments, but the Force exists in all moments simultaneously. Past, present, future. I see them as one." Barry vibrated. His molecules shifted into quantum uncertainty, and the telekinetic grip lost its purchase. He phased through Vader's power like smoke through a grate and rematerialized 50 meters away. "Yeah, I've heard the precognition speech before," Barry said, lightning crackling around his fists. "Thing is, I've fought people who could see the future. Know what I learned? Seeing what happens next doesn't matter if you can't move fast enough to do anything about it." He attacked. Barry moved at speeds that should have been imperceptible. 1,000 punches per second, each one targeting joints, weak points, the vulnerable areas of Vader's armor. But Vader's lightsaber was already there, deflecting, blocking, the red blade moving with impossible precision to intercept strikes that hadn't happened yet from Vader's perspective. "Interesting," Vader said, his tone almost academic. "You move faster than I can perceive, yet the Force shows me where you will be." Barry circled at relativistic speed, creating a vortex of wind that tore branches from trees and scattered the stormtroopers. He threw Speed Force lightning from multiple angles simultaneously. But Vader caught the bolts on his lightsaber, absorbing or redirecting them with practiced ease. "You cannot win," Vader stated. "Every attack you plan, I sense before you execute it. Every move you make, I have already countered in the currents of the Force." "Then I'll stop planning," Barry said. He let instinct take over. No conscious thought, no strategic planning, just pure reaction, letting the Speed Force guide him. He became chaos in motion, attacking from random angles with no pattern, no predictability. His fists phased through the lightsaber, striking Vader's armor with infinite mass punches that cracked the durasteel plating. Vader stumbled, actually stumbled, and Barry saw surprise in the mechanical breathing pattern. "Fascinating," Vader said, recovering his balance. "You can operate without conscious intent, a technique the Jedi called combat meditation, but you achieve it through pure velocity. He raised his lightsaber defensively. "You are more dangerous than I anticipated." "I'm just getting started," Barry replied. He ran circles around Vader, moving faster, pushing his speed higher. The friction from his movement ignited the air, creating a wall of flame that enclosed them both. Vader stood at the center, lightsaber raised, while Barry became a ring of lightning and fire that moved at speeds approaching the fundamental limits of physics. Then Vader did something Barry didn't expect. The Dark Lord drove his lightsaber into the ground. Force lightning exploded from Vader's fingertips, not aimed at Barry, but at the earth itself. The electricity conducted through the jungle floor, through the roots and soil, creating a grid of deadly energy that covered hundreds of square meters. Barry's next step landed in the killing field. Even at his speed, even with his resistance to electrical attacks, the sheer magnitude of power coursing through the ground was overwhelming. His suit's insulation protected him, but the Speed Force connection flickered, disrupted by the electromagnetic interference. He stumbled, his speed dropping to merely supersonic rather than relativistic. Vader's telekinesis caught him again, and this time the grip held. "Your powers come from an external source," Vader observed, crushing Barry slowly through invisible pressure. "Disrupt that source, and you become ordinary." Barry struggled against the Force grip, but without full access to the Speed Force, he couldn't vibrate free. His ribs creaked, his vision blurred. The mechanical breathing filled his ears like a death knell. "You will tell me about this Speed Force," Vader said, pulling Barry closer. "You will explain how you traverse dimensions, and you will serve the Empire or you will die." "Neither," Barry gasped. He reached deep, deeper than he'd ever gone, into the Speed Force connection. The dimensional barrier was there, the thing that had been blocking him since arrival. But now, pushed to his absolute limit, he finally understood what it was. It wasn't blocking the Speed Force. It was the Force itself. The pervasive energy field of this galaxy, creating interference like static on a radio. Two fundamental forces of reality trying to occupy the same space. And Barry Allen was the bridge between them. He pulled on both simultaneously. Golden Speed Force lightning erupted from his body, mixed with something else, a silvery energy that felt ancient, powerful, neither light nor dark, but something older. The two energies spiraled together, and the combined power shattered Vader's telekinetic grip like glass. Barry hit the ground running, and the world exploded into pure speed. He wasn't at 100% anymore. He was at 110%. The Speed Force amplified by the Force, or the Force amplified by the Speed Force. He couldn't tell which, only that he'd somehow tapped into both simultaneously. He moved faster than Vader could predict, faster than the Force could show. He became something new, not just a speedster, but a speed phenomenon that existed outside the normal flow of causality. Vader's lightsaber swung, but Barry had already moved. Vader's Force lightning crackled, but Barry was already elsewhere. The Dark Lord spun, searching, and Barry struck from behind with 1,000 simultaneous impacts across every vulnerable point in the armor. Vader's breathing apparatus cracked. His chest plate shattered. His cape tore away. But Barry didn't kill. Even with unlimited power, even against Darth Vader himself, he didn't cross that line. Instead, he ran. He grabbed Vader, all 2 meters and 100+ kilos of cybernetic Sith Lord, and carried him at relativistic speeds into orbit, through the atmosphere, into the cold of space, up and up until the jungle moon was a green marble below them. Then Barry stopped, holding Vader in place with the Speed Force energy while they drifted in zero gravity. "Listen to me," Barry said, his voice carrying through the vacuum via speed force vibration. I don't want to fight you. I don't want to kill you. But I will protect these people. If you come back to Yavin 4, if you send more troops, if you harm one single person trying to evacuate, I will dismantle every Star Destroyer in your fleet. I will disable every weapon system, evacuate every crew member, and leave your ships as floating scrap. Vader's damaged breathing apparatus wheezed. Without his helmet's full seal, the vacuum was affecting him. He had minutes at best before his life support failed completely. This is mercy, Barry continued. Something you probably don't recognize anymore. But I'm hoping there's enough humanity left in you to understand. The war doesn't have to be this way. You can choose to stop. He could see Vader's eyes through the cracked visor now. Yellow-rimmed, burning with dark side energy, but still human eyes. Still someone who'd once been a person before becoming a monster. The Force shows me, Vader wheezed, struggling to speak. Your death, at my hands. The future isn't written, Barry replied. I've changed destiny before. I'll do it again. He released Vader, giving him a gentle push toward the Executor. The Sith Lord began drifting back toward his flagship, damaged but alive. Barry turned back toward Yavin 4 and ran through space itself, using speed force energy to propel himself back to the jungle moon's surface. He landed in the clearing to find the rebel evacuation nearly complete. The last transports were loading personnel and equipment while starfighters provided cover. 2 hours had passed, exactly as promised. Leia stood at the base of the Falcon's boarding ramp, watching for him. Relief flooded her features when she saw him appear. Everyone's out, she reported. All personnel, all prisoners, all equipment. We're the last ship. She studied him. What happened up there? The Imperial fleet stopped advancing. They're just watching. I had a conversation with Vader, Barry said. Gave him something to think about. You fought Darth Vader and survived, Leia said slowly. Do you understand how impossible that is? Impossible is kind of my thing, Princess. The last of the rebel personnel rushed up the ramp. Han appeared at the top, gesturing urgently. We need to go now. Those Star Destroyers could open fire any second. Barry and Leia hurried aboard. The Falcon lifted off, joining the convoy of rebel ships escaping into orbit. Through the viewport, Barry could see the Imperial fleet. 6 Star Destroyers and the massive Executor, all with weapons charged but not firing. They were letting them go. He's honoring your mercy, Leia said quietly, watching the same scene. Vader could destroy us right now, but he's not. Maybe, Barry said. Or maybe he's just smart enough to know that chasing us means fighting me again. Either way, everyone's safe. That's what matters. The rebel convoy jumped to hyperspace, leaving Yavin 4 behind. And on the bridge of the Executor, Darth Vader stood in his damaged armor, breathing laboriously through emergency life support while technicians scrambled to repair his systems. Lord Vader, an admiral said hesitantly, should we pursue the rebels? No, Vader replied, his voice strained. The speedster was correct. Some battles cannot be won through force alone. He turned to look at the admiral with those burning yellow eyes. But this is not over. Study all data on his capabilities, analyze his fighting patterns, consult with inquisitors on methods to counter his abilities. Yes, my lord. Vader turned back to the viewport, watching the empty space where the Falcon had vanished. You showed me mercy, speedster, whispered. An error, for I have seen your future, and in it I see only darkness. You cannot save this galaxy, and when you finally understand that truth, when hope dies and despair takes its place. His mechanical breathing filled the silence. You will become my greatest weapon. The rebel fleet scattered to a dozen different safe houses across the outer rim. The Falcon, carrying Barry and the core leadership, jumped to a remote station orbiting a lifeless asteroid. One of hundreds of hidden outposts the rebellion maintained for exactly these situations. Barry stood in the station's observation deck, staring out at the infinite void while the medical team examined the microfractures in his ribs from Vader's force grip. The fight had cost him more than he'd admitted. Not just physically, though his accelerated healing was already knitting broken tissue, but mentally. He'd tapped into something new. The combination of speed force and the force itself. Two fundamental energies that shouldn't coexist. The power had been intoxicating, overwhelming, and deeply unsettling. For a moment, moving at those impossible speeds, he'd felt detached, like he was becoming something other than human. Your readings are remarkable, the medical droid said. It's mechanical, voice, clinical, and impersonal. Cellular regeneration occurs at 20 times normal human rates. Bone density is restructuring even as we scan. You should be fully recovered within 6 hours. Thanks, Barry said absently, still staring at the stars. The door hissed open. Leia entered, dismissing the medical droid with a gesture. She stood beside Barry in silence for a long moment, both of them watching asteroid fragments drift past the viewport. General Dodonna is calling it the miracle of Yavin, she said finally. One person holding off an entire Imperial invasion, buying time for a complete evacuation with 0 casualties, fighting Darth Vader himself and living to tell about it. She turned to look at him. The whole rebellion is talking about you. Some are calling you a guardian angel. Others think you might be a Force ghost taking physical form. I'm just a guy with super speed, Barry replied. Nothing mystical about it. You combine the speed force with the force itself, Leia said quietly. I felt it, even from the evacuation zone. A surge of energy that made every force-sensitive refugee we rescued from that prison transport cry out simultaneously. They said it felt like reality itself was bending. Barry's hands clenched on the viewport railing. I didn't mean to. Vader was crushing me, disrupting my connection to the speed force, and I just reached deeper. Found something I didn't know was there. Can you do it again? I don't know. Maybe. Barry closed his eyes, reaching for that combined energy. The speed force responded immediately, but the force remained elusive. Present, but not quite touchable, like trying to grab smoke. It's not consistent. I can access the speed force fine, but the force, it's like it only responded because I was in immediate danger. That's how the force works, Leia said. It responds to need, to emotion, to the fundamental nature of a situation. The Jedi spent decades training to access it reliably. She paused. There are Force sensitives in the rebellion. People who feel the Force but never had Jedi training. Most of them are too old to learn now, and we have no teachers anyway. But you're something new. A bridge between two kinds of power. I don't want to be a bridge, Barry said, more harshly than he intended. I want to go home. Back to my Earth, my team, my wife. This galaxy, these powers, this war, none of it was supposed to be my problem. Leia was quiet for a moment. But it is now, whether you wanted it or not. Yeah, Barry admitted tiredly. It is. The door opened again. Han, Chewbacca, and General Dodonna entered, the latter carrying a datapad with urgent information written across his weathered features. We have a situation, Dodonna said without preamble. Imperial communications are in chaos. Vader's failure to capture or kill you at Yavin has created a power vacuum of sorts. Regional governors are arguing about how to handle you. Some want to negotiate. Others want to bring overwhelming force, and the Emperor himself has taken notice. The Emperor, Barry repeated. Palpatine, right? The guy running this whole fascist operation? Emperor Palpatine, Leia confirmed. Former Supreme Chancellor of the Republic, now absolute ruler of the galaxy. He's a Sith Lord, like Vader, but more powerful. Vader is the fist, but Palpatine is the mind behind the Empire. And he's interested in me? Dodonna activated the datapad, projecting a holographic recording. It showed Emperor Palpatine, an elderly man in dark robes, his face scarred and twisted, eyes burning with yellow intensity. He was addressing what looked like a council of Imperial officers. This speedster represents an unknown variable, Palpatine's voice hissed, dripping with malice. Lord Vader reports abilities that transcend normal physical limitations, speed that defies relativity, partial immunity to force techniques. Most concerning, evidence of dimensional honesty travel. The Emperor's smile was a horrible thing. Such power cannot be allowed to serve the rebellion. It must be controlled or it must be eliminated. The recording ended. He's declared you a Class 1 Imperial priority target, Dodonna said. Higher than any rebel leader, higher even than surviving Jedi. The bounty on your head is 10 million credits, enough to buy a small fleet. So I'm officially the Empire's most wanted, Barry said. Great. That'll really help with the whole trying to get home thing. There's more, Leia said, her expression grim. The Emperor is offering amnesty to any rebel cell that provides information leading to your capture. Full pardons, credits, even positions in the Imperial government. She met his eyes. He's trying to divide us. Make the rebellion choose between protecting you and protecting themselves. Barry felt something cold settle in his stomach. You should turn me in. What? Leia's voice was sharp. I'm serious. I didn't ask to be here. Didn't ask to become the Empire's priority target. If me being with the rebellion puts you all at risk. Stop. Leia's command cut through his words like a blade. We don't abandon people who fight for us. We don't trade lives for temporary safety. That's what makes us different from the Empire. She's right, Han said, surprising everyone. Look, I'm no hero. I'm a smuggler who likes credits and staying alive. But even I know you don't throw someone to the Empire just because things get hard. That's a line you don't cross. Chewbacca growled agreement, his tone making it clear he'd personally fight anyone who suggested otherwise. The question isn't whether we protect you, Dodonna said. The question is how we use this situation to our advantage. The Emperor wants you captured. Vader wants revenge for his defeat. Every bounty hunter in the galaxy will be looking for you. He smiled thinly. That's a lot of attention on one person, attention that isn't on our other operations. Barry understood immediately. You want me as bait. I want you as a distraction, Dodonna corrected. You're already the most visible rebel asset. Let's make that work for us. While the Empire obsesses over catching the Flash, we can rebuild our infrastructure, evacuate more prisoners, hit targets they're not watching. But that means putting Barry in constant danger, Leia objected. Making him the primary target for every Imperial resource? I'm already the primary target, Barry interrupted. Might as well make it count. What did you have in mind, General? Dodonna pulled up a star chart showing the core worlds. The Emperor is hosting a grand military parade on Coruscant in 3 days. A show of force, demonstrating Imperial might to the conquered populations. Thousands of stormtroopers, hundreds of vehicles, all the pomp and ceremony the Empire loves. He zoomed in on the capital planet. If a certain red-suited speedster were to disrupt that parade, say by disabling all the vehicles, removing every weapon, maybe even stealing the Emperor's personal banner, it would humiliate them. Leia finished, understanding dawning. The Emperor's grand display turned into a farce. The whole galaxy would see it on HoloNet. And while they're dealing with that embarrassment, we hit 3 supply depots in the mid-rim, Dodonna continued. Depots that are currently guarded, but will have their security forces reassigned to Coruscant for the parade. Barry studied the holographic display, his mind calculating the risks. Infiltrating the capital planet of a galaxy-spanning empire, disrupting a military parade in front of billions of witnesses, making a fool of the Emperor himself. It was insane. It was impossible. It was exactly the kind of impossible that Barry Allen specialized in. "I'll need intel," he said. "Parade route, security protocols, escape vectors. And I'll need a way off Coruscant after. They'll lock down the entire planet the second I make my move." "We can get you the intel," Dodonna said. "As for extraction..." He looked at Han. "Oh no," Han said immediately. No. You are not asking me to fly into the most heavily defended planet in the galaxy to pick up a guy who just humiliated the Emperor." 50,000 credits, Leia said. "Not for any. Plus expenses," she added. "And the rebellion's gratitude. Gratitude doesn't pay my debts to Jabba." 100,000 credits, Leia said flatly. "Final offer. And you know you're going to do it anyway, so stop pretending to haggle." Han opened his mouth, closed it, then sighed deeply. "I hate that you know me that well." He pointed at Barry. "You better be at the extraction point exactly when I arrive, or I'm leaving without you." "Wouldn't expect anything less," Barry said, grinning despite the tension. "Good." Dodonna deactivated the hologram. "We have 3 days to prepare. Flash, you'll need to memorize every detail of Coruscant's layout. The parade route, security stations, Imperial palace locations, spaceport coordinates. This has to be perfect." "I'll be ready," Barry promised. Over the next 3 days, Barry trained and studied with an intensity that surprised even himself. Leia provided detailed intelligence on Coruscant, a planet-wide city, trillions of inhabitants, layers upon layers of construction going kilometers deep. The surface was pristine Imperial architecture, but beneath it lay older levels where criminals, smugglers, and the dispossessed survived in shadows. Rebel spies transmitted real-time data on parade preparations. The Emperor was sparing no expense. AT-AT walkers, speeder bikes, hover tanks, battalions of stormtroopers in perfect formation. HoloNet cameras everywhere, broadcasting to every corner of the Empire. It would be the perfect stage for humiliation. Barry spent hours memorizing maps, running simulations with the Rebellion's tactical computers. He pushed his Speed Force connection harder than ever, testing his limits, seeing how fast he could actually move in this galaxy now that he'd adapted. 98% capacity, almost full power. On the night before the mission, Leia found him in the training room, running combat simulations against holographic inquisitors. "Can't sleep?" she asked, leaning against the doorframe. "Don't really need to," Barry replied, phasing through a holographic lightsaber strike. "My metabolism is weird. I can function for days without rest if necessary." "That's not what I asked." Barry stopped the simulation and turned to face her. "I'm nervous. Not about the mission. I've done crazier things. But about what it means. I'm about to make myself the most hated person in the Empire. Every bounty hunter, every soldier, every fanatic who worships Palpatine, they'll all want me dead." "You're already that person," Leia pointed out. "This just makes it official." "Yeah, But there's a difference between being a wanted fugitive and being a symbol. Once I do this, I can't undo it. I become something bigger than just Barry Allen trying to get home. I become the Flash, permanent thorn in the Empire's side. Leia was quiet for a moment. Is that so bad? Being a symbol of resistance? It is, if I figure out how to get home and have to leave. Barry said quietly. What happens to everyone who believed in that symbol when it disappears? What happens to the hope I create when I'm gone? Leia crossed the room to stand directly in front of him. Then you better make damn sure that hope is strong enough to survive without you. That's what symbols are for, Barry. Not to carry the burden alone, but to inspire others to carry it together. She placed a hand on his shoulder. Do this mission. Humiliate the Empire. Show the galaxy that the Emperor isn't invincible. And if you do find your way home someday, you'll leave behind people who learn to stand up for themselves. Barry met her eyes and saw the same determination that had made her a princess, a senator, and a rebel leader before she was 30. You're pretty wise for someone so young. I grew up fast, Leia said with a sad smile. War does that. Yeah, Barry agreed, thinking of his own journey. From crime scene investigator to superhero. From optimistic kid to someone who'd seen friends die and timelines collapse. It really does. The next morning, Barry stood in the Falcon's cargo hold while Han plotted the jump to Coruscant. He wore his flash suit, freshly repaired by rebel technicians who'd marveled at the exotic materials. His cowl was up, lightning crackling faintly around his boots. Last chance to back out, Han called from the cockpit. We hit hyperspace in 30 seconds. Not backing out, Barry replied. Leia appeared beside him, holding something small. Here, Rebel comlink, specially modified. Short range only, so the Empire can't track it. But it'll let you coordinate with Han for extraction. Barry took the device and clipped it to his belt. Thanks. For everything. For believing in me, for not turning me over to save yourselves, for... Leia kissed him on the cheek, cutting off his words. Go be impossible, Flash. Show them what a hero looks like. She was gone before he could respond, heading back to the command station where she'd coordinate with other rebel cells during the operation. Jumping now, Han announced. The stars stretched. The Falcon entered hyperspace, and Barry Allen prepared to humiliate an Emperor. 3 hours later, they dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Coruscant system. The planet hung before them like a jewel, city lights covering every square kilometer of surface, orbital stations dotting the space around it, and enough military traffic to make Han curse creatively. How the hell am I supposed to infiltrate this? He muttered, watching star destroyers patrol in geosynchronous orbit. You're not infiltrating, Barry said. Just get close enough for me to jump. I'll handle. The rest, close enough, turned out to be 10,000 kilometers, about as near as the Falcon could get without triggering proximity alarms. Han dropped them out of hyperspace with precise timing, putting them in a blind spot between patrol routes. You've got exactly 6 minutes before the next Imperial scan, Han said. After that, they'll detect us and we'll have to run. 6 minutes is plenty. Barry moved to the airlock. Remember, extraction point is sublevel 43, Eastern Spaceport District. Be there exactly 1 hour after the parade starts. I'll be there, Han promised. You just make sure you are too. Barry sealed his suit's breathing apparatus and opened the airlock. Coruscant hung below him, a planet of endless light and darkness. Time to bring some lightning. He jumped. Barry fell toward Coruscant like a comet wrapped in crimson lightning. The planet's atmosphere hit him at terminal velocity, friction heating his suit to temperatures that would vaporize an ordinary human. But the speed force protected him. converting kinetic energy into harmless discharge as he streaked through the upper atmosphere. Below, the endless cityscape of the capital world sprawled in every direction, a galaxy of lights that put Earth's largest cities to shame. He could see the parade route now, a massive boulevard cutting through the governmental district, lined with billions of spectators held back by security barricades. The Imperial Palace loomed at one end, a ziggurat of dark stone and authoritarian architecture. Holographic screens the size of buildings broadcast the spectacle to every corner of the planet. Barry adjusted his trajectory, phasing through the energy shields that protected the upper atmospheric levels, and landed on a skyscraper rooftop 3 kilometers from the parade route. His suit's chrono registered 11 minutes until the parade began. Time to scout. He blurred through the city at speeds that turned the architecture into abstract streaks of color. Coruscant was overwhelming, not just in scale, but in complexity. Millions of speeders flying through aerial traffic lanes, billions of beings going about their lives, security checkpoints on every corner. The Empire's presence was absolute. Stormtroopers on patrol, propaganda holograms displaying the Emperor's face, surveillance cameras tracking every public space. Barry memorized it all in seconds. Escape routes, security stations, power grid junctions, communication hubs. His mind constructed a 3-dimensional map of the parade area with perfect recall. The parade staging area was exactly where Rebel intelligence said it would be. A massive military complex adjacent to the boulevard. TAT walkers stood in rows like mechanical gods, their pilots running final checks. Speeder, bikes, hover tanks, troop transports. Enough military hardware to conquer a dozen planets. And stormtroopers, thousands of them, assembled in perfect formations that stretched for kilometers. Barry spotted the Emperor's observation platform, a raised structure overlooking the parade route, shielded by energy barriers and surrounded by royal guards in crimson armor. Palpatine would watch from there, his presence a constant reminder of absolute power. Perfect. The parade began with a fanfare of Imperial trumpets that echoed across the city. The first wave of stormtroopers marched onto the boulevard in lockstep, their white armor gleaming under Coruscant's sun. Holographic cameras captured every angle, broadcasting to trillions of viewers across the galaxy. Barry waited. Timing was everything. The AT-ATs moved next, their massive legs shaking the ground with each step. The crowd, coerced into attendance, Barry suspected, applauded with the enthusiasm of people who knew what happened. To those who showed insufficient loyalty, children waved Imperial flags. Adults stood in silence, faces blank. The Emperor appeared on his platform, flanked by Darth Vader and a dozen royal guards. Even from 3 kilometers away, Barry could feel the dark side energy radiating from Palpatine like heat from a furnace. The old man raised his hands, and the crowd's applause intensified. Whether from genuine fervor or fear, Barry couldn't tell. "Citizens of the Empire," Palpatine's voice boomed across the city, amplified by thousands of speakers. "Today, we celebrate our strength, our unity, our inevitable destiny as masters of the galaxy. No force can stand against us. No rebellion can threaten our eternal peace." Barry smiled inside his cowl. "Let's test that theory." He moved. The world became lightning in motion. Barry hit the parade route at 99% speed, moving so fast that atmospheric friction turned the air around him into plasma. He started with the AT-ATs, phasing inside their cockpits, disabling the control systems with carefully applied electromagnetic pulses, then moving to the next walker before the pilots realized anything was wrong. 8 AT-ATs, disabled in 4 seconds. The walkers took 3 more steps before their legs locked up, freezing mid-stride like metallic statues. Pilots hammered at dead controls while the crowd murmured in confusion. Barry was already hitting the speeder bikes. He removed the power cells from 100 vehicles in the span of a heartbeat, stacking them in a neat pyramid on the boulevard. Then the hover tanks. He disabled their repulsor lifts, causing them to settle to the ground with confused whines from their operators. 10 seconds elapsed. The stormtrooper formations were next. Barry ran through them like wind through wheat, removing every weapon, every helmet, every piece of equipment that made them look intimidating. Thousands of soldiers suddenly found themselves standing in their black undersuits, unarmed and exposed, while their gear appeared in organized piles along the parade route. 15 seconds. The crowd's confusion turned to shock. Holographic cameras captured every moment. Imperial might being systematically dismantled by something moving too fast to see. All they caught were blurs of red and gold, streaks of lightning, and the impossible sight of the Empire's parade ground to a halt. Barry phased through the energy barrier around the Emperor's platform. Palpatine's head snapped toward him with supernatural awareness, yellow eyes widening in recognition. Vader's lightsaber ignited with a snap hiss. But Barry was already past them both. He grabbed the massive Imperial banner, a flag the size of a building, displaying the Empire's cogwheel symbol, and ripped it free from its moorings. Then he carried it at super speed through the parade route, using it like a cape as he ran circles around the disabled military hardware. 20 seconds. "Stop him!" Palpatine's voice cracked across the boulevard like thunder. "Kill the speedster!" Royal Guards opened fire with their force pikes, red energy bolts screaming through the air. Barry phased through them, leaving afterimages that confused targeting systems. Vader leaped from the platform with force-enhanced strength, lightsaber cutting toward where Barry would be. But Barry had already learned. He didn't plan his movements, didn't think about where he'd go next. Pure instinct, pure reaction, moving faster than the Force could predict. He ran up the side of a building, across its surface, over Vader's head, and delivered a supersonic flick to the Dark Lord's helmet that sent it spinning into the crowd. Underneath, Vader's scarred face was exposed, pale, twisted, more machine than man. But Barry didn't stop to stare. He was already gone, running through the parade route one more time to ensure every weapon was disabled, every vehicle neutralized, every soldier disarmed. 30 seconds total. Barry skidded to a stop at the center of the boulevard, standing atop a disabled AT-AT walker. The Imperial banner draped around his shoulders like a trophy. Below him, thousands of unarmed stormtroopers, disabled military hardware, and a crowd of billions watching in stunned silence. Holographic cameras focused on him from every angle. His image was being broadcast to trillions of beings across the galaxy. The red-suited figure who just humiliated the Empire in 30 seconds. "People of the galaxy," Barry said, his voice carrying through commandeered speakers. "The Empire wants you to believe they're invincible. They want you to think resistance is futile, that their power is absolute." He gestured to the chaos around him. "They're lying." He pulled the Imperial banner off his shoulders and let it fall to the ground. "I'm called the Flash. I'm not from your galaxy. I'm from somewhere else entirely, somewhere that never learned to bow to tyrants. And I'm here to tell you something important. You don't have to live in fear. You don't have to accept oppression as inevitable." On the observation platform, Palpatine was screaming orders at his guards. Vader was retrieving his helmet, rage radiating from him in palpable waves. But neither could reach Barry. He was simply too fast. "The rebellion is real," Barry continued. "They're fighting for your freedom, and they're winning. Every day, more people stand up. Every day, the Empire's grip weakens. And today, you've seen proof that even the Emperor's greatest military display can't stand against someone who refuses to give up." He looked directly at the nearest holographic camera. "To everyone watching, remember this moment. Remember that one person with courage can make a difference. Remember that tyranny only succeeds when good people do nothing." He smiled. "And remember that the Flash is watching. I'll dismantle every operation, free every prisoner, protect every innocent person I can find, because that's what heroes do." Then he ran. The boulevard became a blur as Barry accelerated beyond the camera's ability to track. He phased through buildings, across rooftops, down into the lower levels of Coruscant, where the city's underbelly lurked in perpetual twilight. Behind him, chaos erupted. The Emperor was demanding immediate lockdown of the entire planet. Vader was marshaling every available Inquisitor for a hunt. Star destroyers in orbit were scrambling fighters. Every security force on Coruscant received the same order: find the speedster at any cost. But Barry was already kilometers away, descending through city levels that became progressively darker and more dangerous. Sub-level 10, sub-level 20, sub-level 30. His comm crackled. "Flash, this is Solo. I'm approaching extraction point, but the Imperials are everywhere. They've locked down the spaceport, no ships in or out." "Can you get through?" Barry asked, still running. "Maybe, if I'm really stupid and lucky." A pause, which, let's be honest, describes most of my career choices. "Then be stupid and lucky. I'm 3 minutes out." Barry hit sub-level 43, a realm of flickering neon signs, sketchy cantinas, and beings who asked no questions because they had their own secrets to hide. The spaceport district was controlled by criminal syndicates that barely acknowledged Imperial authority, which made it perfect for clandestine operations. The extraction point was a landing platform jutting from the side of a massive support column. Barry arrived to find it crawling with stormtroopers, at least 50 of them, securing every approach. They'd guessed his destination. "Damn," Barry muttered. "Han, we've got a problem. Extraction point is compromised." "Yeah, I can see that from here," Han replied. "I'm in visual range, but if I land with all those troopers..." "Don't land, just get close." "What are you? Oh no. No, you are not doing what I think you're doing. Just get close," Barry said. "I've done this before." He burst from cover, a crimson blur that crossed the landing platform faster than the stormtroopers could aim. They fired anyway, 50 rifles discharging in ragged volleys, red bolts crisscrossing the platform in a killing field. Barry phased through all of them. The Millennium Falcon screamed past the platform, maybe 20 meters away, its boarding ramp extended. Han was flying like a maniac, juking between support columns while TIE fighters pursued from above. Barry didn't slow down. He ran straight off the platform's edge and jumped. For a moment, he was in free fall, 4,000 meters of open air between him and the lower levels far below. The Falcon was pulling away, its engines at full burn. Too far, too fast. He wasn't going to make it, unless he pushed harder. Barry tapped into the speed force completely, burning through his reserves with reckless abandon. Golden lightning exploded around him as he accelerated mid-air, using the speed force to propel himself forward like a rocket. The gap closed. 20 meters, 15, 10. He crashed through the Falcon's boarding ramp at terminal velocity, tucking into a roll that absorbed the impact. The ship lurched from his momentum, and Han's cursing filled the comm. "What did I say about warning me before doing insane things?" "You said do insane things," Barry shouted back, laughing despite the danger. "I'm just following orders." The Falcon banked hard, dodging turbolaser fire from a pursuing Star Destroyer. Chewbacca roared something from the gunner position, probably suggestions about evasive maneuvers, or possibly just complaints about humans in general. "Hyperdrive's charged," Han announced. "Jumping in 3, 2. A massive impact rocked the ship. Alarms screamed. Through the viewport, Barry saw a TIE fighter had clipped their stabilizer, damaging the hyperdrive coupling. "Hyperdrive's offline," Han shouted. "We need 30 seconds to reroute." "We don't have 30 seconds," Barry replied, watching more TIE fighters converge on their position. "Then get creative." Barry ran to the gun turret access. "Chewie, I need your gun." The Wookiee looked at him with confusion, but moved aside. Barry took position at the quad laser cannon, feeling its mechanisms through his enhanced perception. Too slow. The targeting computer was designed for normal human reaction times, which meant it was useless to someone operating in microseconds. So Barry ignored it. He manually aimed and fired the quad lasers at speeds that should have been impossible. Tracking, leading, predicting TIE fighter movements through pure calculation and reflexes. Every shot found its target. Every burst hit a fighter's weak point: solar panels, cockpit seals, engine ports. Within 10 seconds, 8 TIE fighters spiraled away, disabled but not destroyed. "Hyperdrive's back," Han called. "Jumping now." The stars stretched. The Falcon entered hyperspace with TIE fighters and Star Destroyers in pursuit. But pursuit meant nothing once you'd made the jump. They were safe. Barry slumped in the gunner's seat, breathing hard. His Speed Force reserves were depleted, maybe 60% remaining. The adrenaline crash was hitting, and for the first time in hours, he let himself feel the exhaustion. "You did it," Han said from the cockpit doorway. "You actually did it. You humiliated the Emperor in front of the entire galaxy." "We did it," Barry corrected. "I couldn't have escaped without you." "Damn right you couldn't." Han grinned. "That jump was the stupidest, most dangerous thing I've ever participated in, and I once did a Kessel run that involved flying through a black hole's accretion disk." Chewbacca made a sound that was definitely laughter, adding something that Barry understood as, "And he complains about my life choices." The journey back to the Rebel rendezvous point took 6 hours. Barry spent most of it sleeping, actual, genuine sleep, something he rarely needed but desperately wanted. When he woke, Leia was sitting beside him in the cargo hold, watching him with an expression he couldn't quite read. "The holonet is going insane," she said quietly. "Your speech, the footage of the parade, all of it. Every network is running it on repeat. The Empire's trying to spin it as a terrorist attack, but people aren't buying it. They saw what you did. Non-lethal, precise, humiliating, but not murderous. Is that good or bad? Good for the rebellion. Recruitment inquiries are up 300%. Resistance cells that went dormant are reactivating. You've given people hope, Barry. Real, tangible hope that the Empire can be beaten. And bad for me?" Leia's smile was rueful. "The bounty on your head is now 50 million credits. Boba Fett, the most dangerous bounty hunter in the galaxy, has announced he's taking the contract. And the Emperor has declared you an enemy of civilization, authorized lethal force on sight, no trial. So, pretty much exactly what we expected." "Pretty much." Leia was quiet for a moment. "Was it worth it? Making yourself the most hunted person in galactic history?" Barry thought about the crowd on Coruscant. The billions who'd watched the parade, seen the Empire humiliated, witnessed proof that resistance was possible. He thought about the freed prisoners from the transport, the evacuees from Yavin 4, all the people who now had a reason to believe. "Yeah," he said. "It was worth it." They arrived at the rendezvous to a hero's welcome. The entire rebel leadership was there. General Dodonna, Admiral Akbar, dozens of cell commanders who'd come specifically to meet the Flash. They cheered when Barry descended the Falcon's ramp, applauded his success, called him the greatest asset the rebellion had ever gained. Barry smiled and accepted their praise, but inside, he felt a growing unease. He'd become exactly what he feared, a symbol larger than life, carrying the hopes of people he might have to abandon if he found a way home. Every success made him more essential to the rebellion's morale. Every victory bound him tighter to a galaxy that wasn't his own. That night, alone in his quarters, Barry tried his communicator again. The one Cisco had built, the one that should connect across dimensions. Static greeted him, the same white noise that had been there since he arrived. "Iris," he whispered to the empty room. "I don't know if you can hear me. I don't even know if you're still looking. But I'm still here, still fighting, still trying to find my way back to you." The communicator remained silent. Barry closed his eyes and reached for the Speed Force, feeling its familiar embrace. But underneath it, he felt something else now. The Force, that pervasive energy field of this galaxy. Two powers intertwined in him, neither one fully his own anymore. He was changing, adapting, becoming something new. And he wasn't sure if that terrified him or excited him. Outside, his window, stars he didn't recognize wheeled through an alien sky. Somewhere out there, Darth Vader was hunting him. Boba Fett was preparing his pursuit. The Emperor was plotting revenge, but also out there, prisoners who needed rescuing, beings suffering under tyranny, people who needed someone fast enough, brave enough, stubborn enough to stand against impossible odds. Barry Allen, the fastest man alive, was trapped in a galaxy far, far away. But he wasn't done fighting, not by a long shot. The HoloNet broadcast spread like wildfire across the galaxy. A crimson speedster dismantling an Imperial parade in 30 seconds, standing atop disabled military hardware, declaring that resistance was possible. In the weeks that followed, the rebellion saw unprecedented growth. Dormant cells reactivated. New recruits arrived daily. Hope, once nearly extinguished, blazed anew. But hope came with a price. Barry became the Empire's obsession. 50 million credits attracted every bounty, hunter, mercenary, and opportunist in the galaxy. Boba Fett tracked his movements with terrifying precision. Inquisitors set elaborate traps. Vader personally led hunter-killer squadrons designed specifically to counter superhuman speed. Yet Barry adapted. He learned to merge Speed Force and Force, creating techniques no Jedi or Sith had ever imagined. He rescued thousands of prisoners, disabled Imperial facilities across dozens of worlds, and became a legend whispered in fearful reverence by stormtroopers and celebrated by the oppressed. The rebellion flourished under his protection, but Barry never stopped searching for a way home. Late at night, alone with his thoughts, he'd reach for the communicator that never answered. He'd think about Iris, about his team, about the Earth that seemed increasingly like a dream. Princess Leia told him once that some heroes were meant for the moments that needed them most. That destiny wasn't about choosing your battles, but about rising to meet them when they arrived. Barry didn't know if he believed in destiny, but he believed in standing up to bullies. He believed in protecting the innocent. He believed that one person moving fast enough, brave enough, could change the course of history. The Empire would continue hunting him. Vader would never stop pursuing revenge. The Emperor would plot increasingly elaborate traps. And somewhere, in dimensions beyond counting, his team was probably still searching for him. But until he found his way home, if he found his way home, Barry Allen would keep running, keep fighting, keep proving that even in a galaxy dominated by an empire, consumed by darkness, ruled by fear, lightning could still strike. The Flash had arrived in the Star Wars galaxy, and nothing would ever be the same.